The weeping hollow groaned like something alive. Its breath was the fog, its heartbeat, the steady thrum of the chained obelisk above, one pulse away from rupture. The deeper they went, the heavier the air grew. Not just damp, but weighted, as though something ancient was watching them, remembering them. Drake clicked his tongue, eyes fixed on the massive chain suspending the obelisk. 5 left. The 6th snapped a few minutes ago. Lyra ran her fingers over one of the links. Her voice trembled. Each chain has names carved into it. Kale stepped closer. Vale Solane. Drake Arclight. And then Kale Arclight. Drake's brow furrowed. What the hell is this place? Kale's eyes didn't leave the chain. A prison. A pause. Or a judgment. A gust tore through the hollow, cold, mocking. And in it, faint laughter. Not evil. Not insane. Just the sound of something that already knew how the story would end. Then the chain shuddered. Another snapped. 4 remaining. Above the hollow, obelisk awakening. The obelisk convulsed. Aura flared across its surface, violet bleeding into black. Beneath it, something began to form, a shape clawing its way from the shadows. It had wings, not feathered, not leathery, but woven from regret. A creature half spirit, half god. An eternal spawn. Kale's grip on Soulbrand tightened. He didn't need Zera's explanations. He already understood. If an eternal spawn manifested outside a sealed dungeon, it meant the veil between realms was thinning. Something or someone was forcing the rift open from the other side. Lyra's voice broke through the silence. Kale, it's trying to speak. The creature's mouth didn't move, but Kale heard it. Did you enjoy the reflection in the fog? Do you understand now why the strong fall? You wield your brother's sin like a sword, Kale Arclight, but your chains are breaking too. Then it screamed, not in pain, but in joy. Combat initiated, eternal spawn, chain weaver of Noctheron. It fell from the sky like a meteor. Chains tore free from the obelisk, snapping through the fog like living whips. The ground imploded. Trees shattered. The marsh folded inward on itself under the sheer pressure of its aura. Kale's ashen domain ignited, gray fire roaring around him, but even that began to flicker under the spawn's crushing presence. Drake laughed, already charging. If I die here, I'm kicking your ghost's ass, Kale. His fists flared crimson, infernal surge. The impact blew the fog apart, but the creature barely staggered. One limb twisted into a spear of guilt and pierced the air. Lyra shouted, Solar Shield Veil. Golden light flared just in time to catch Drake midair. I can't hold it long, she gasped. Its aura eats light. Kale was already moving, burnout dash. Soul Scorch. Fading step. He didn't aim for the creature. He aimed for the chains. Each link bound its physical form. Break the chains, and it would unravel. Clang. Soulbrand struck. The metal resisted, then cracked, his brother's buried aura bleeding through his own, forcing it open. One chain down. The creature roared. Kale's voice was quiet, steady. Oh, what a strong aura. This time, there was no awe in it. Only resolve. Flashback. The Ember Brood's last day. Flames. Screams. The fall of a kingdom built on fire. Drake Arclight, founder of the Ember Brood, stood before a collapsing throne, eyes wild. They abandoned us, Kale. We bled for them. Kale grabbed his arm. Then walk away with me. But the eternal whisper had already taken root. Drake's will, his brother's light, was burning out. That day, Kale severed their bond. But he couldn't kill him. He walked away, and that regret became one of his chains. Back to the present. Kale's body ignited, not in flame, but in ash rebirth. His aura twisted, adaptive, devouring the eternal spawn's energy and converting it into raw power. 2 chains down, then 3. The chainweaver screamed, slashing wildly. The marsh convulsed with every strike. Lyra bled light from her eyes, forcing her shield to hold. Drake staggered to his feet, refusing to stay down. Kale didn't speak, didn't think. He was beyond words now. He shattered the 4th chain. The creature lunged, its heart exposed, glowing like molten sorrow. Kale moved through the storm, his aura burning pure white ash. He drove Soulbrand into the core, not with rage, with forgiveness. The eternal spawn's roar shifted, from fury to peace. Its body disintegrated into light. The chains fell, not from defeat, but from release. The hollow pulsed one final time, then went still. The fog thinned, only a little. Hours later, camp perimeter. The fire burned low. The marsh was quiet. Zara appeared beside Kale without a sound, as she always did. Her eyes reflected the dying embers. You broke the loop. Kale didn't look up. What was that thing? Your brother's guilt, she said softly, twisted by the marsh, given voice by what still waits. Still waits. Zara's smile was faint, almost sorrowful. The eternal behind the fall of Ember Deep. The one you haven't met yet. Kale rose, slow and deliberate. The firelight caught the glint of the ember's sigil beneath his cloak. Then we find him next. The silence didn't last. It never did in Noctheron. Beneath the lifted fog and fallen chains, something stirred. Not a roar, not a quake, a resonance, like an echo reaching out to something older and far darker. Kale stood at the marsh's edge, the ash of the fallen, eternal spawn clinging to his armor like soot. Soulbrand hung at his back, its glow faint for the first time in days. It's not over, he said quietly. Drake groaned, straightening his bruised frame. How do you always know when we're screwed again? Lyra leaned on her staff, pale and shaking. Because he's right. Zara perched on the branch of a dead tree, her hood drawn low. No smirk this time, only silence. Her eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. That thing you killed, she said softly, was just the sentinel. You didn't close the door. You shook the lock. Now it wants to open. Kale met her gaze. Then we'll kick it down first. Subzone, Verdant Maw. Access granted. Descent into the Verdant Maw. They found the entrance at midnight, hidden behind the ruin of the shattered obelisk. A spiral staircase, carved from bone and twisted roots, wound downward into the hollow's throat. No aura lights worked here. Only Kale's ashen glow pushed back the dark. Drake spat on the first step. Who builds a staircase out of spinal cords and depression? Lyra muttered a prayer under her breath. Kale led the way. Every step whispered. He chose death. You let him fall. You're not his shadow. You're his grave. Kale didn't answer. He just kept walking. The Verdant Maw, dungeon core fragment zone. At the bottom lay a cavern too vast to measure, like the inside of a god skull. From the ceiling hung fragments of ancient dungeon cores, split and bleeding black ichor, suspended in vines that pulsed faintly. And at the center, a heart. Not a symbol, not an illusion. A real, glowing, fleshy heart, impaled by thousands of weapons, blades, relics, even bones, throbbing with cursed life. Lyra gasped, collapsing to one knee. That's an ancient dungeon heart. But it failed. Zara descended last, her tone grim. This is where a dungeon tried to become an eternal and lost. Kale's eyes narrowed. It's still alive. Zara nodded once. And it remembers him. Dungeon memories sink. Initiated. The heart pulsed once, then dragged Kale's mind inward. Flashback. Drake Arclight's last descent. Kale stood in another's body. His brother's. He saw through Drake's eyes as he entered this same chamber, alone. He saw the Eternal waiting in the dark, offering its bargain. Power, in exchange for everything else. Drake had hesitated. Then he accepted. The chains of the Hollow were born here. Not to imprison him, but to anchor his guilt to the world. Kale clenched his fists, fury trembling through him. You let it take you. A whisper answered from the void. I didn't lose myself. I gave it away to save you. Kale's vision shattered. Returned to present. The heart beat faster. Once. Twice. Then its surface rippled, and a face pushed through. Eyes like void light. Hair of coiling roots. A crown of petrified grief. An eternal. The one who had corrupted Emberdeep. Eternal designation. Leon Veyne, the root-bound sovereign. Its voice slithered through the air. Ah, the broken sword returns. Kale drew Soulbrand. Ash and violet flared along the blade's edge. Drake cracked his neck beside him. Lyra raised her staff, shaking but resolute. Zara? Gone again. Boss battle initiated. Mir Veyne, root-bound sovereign. Phase 1. The eternal unfolded from the heart like a flower made of thorns. Each petal a memory. Each limb a weapon shaped from regret. It didn't walk. It crawled through the air. The first strike came without sound, roots erupting from the ground to seize Kale's legs. Ash rebirth. Afterimage step. He vanished in his smoke, reappearing midair, slicing through the roots. They healed instantly. Drake bellowed, hurling himself forward in a storm of beast flame barrage. Fire exploded across the cavern, only to be absorbed by the eternal skin. Lyra's eyes widened. It feeds on our intent. The stronger the emotion, the stronger it becomes. Kale didn't hesitate. He cut his emotions off, cleanly, absolutely. No rage, no grief, no guilt, only focus. Ashen domain, zero flame form, activated. His aura went silent, completely still. The eternal froze. For the first time, it flinched. Kale's blade didn't burn now. It erased. Every strike cut through the eternal's tether to Drake's memories. Chains shattered, roots withered, petals dissolved. Then Kale whispered almost softly, "Oh, what a strong aura." The eternal screamed, not from pain, but recognition. Kale wasn't Drake, but he had surpassed him, and he had come to end what his brother began.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
The chamber convulsed. The heart, now fully awakened by Kale's presence, twisted its roots inward, wrapping itself in layers of old memories and corrupted aura. It throbbed like a second sun, sick, violent, eternal. Kale didn't move. His ashen aura burned calmly around him, silent as snowfall, sharp as a blade. His breathing was even. His hands didn't tremble. But inside, he felt it. Resonance. Not just with the eternal, but with the truth. Kale. Lyra's voice cracked behind him. That thing, it's fusing with the root core. If it completes the process, it'll reformat the entire region. Nocturne will die. Drake growled. Let it try. I've got fists, fire, and trauma to spare. Kale raised a hand. No. He stepped forward toward the heart. The others stared. Wait, what are you? Lyra reached out. But Kale's aura surged. He wasn't walking toward the eternal. He was walking into it. Fusion interface detected. Unknown aura sync attempt. Warning. Ashen aura does not comply with eternal protocols. Override. Kale didn't hesitate. Yes. Aura fusion. Domain sync. Initiated. There was no light. There was no pain. There was only memory. Inside the heart core, Kale floated in a sea of fragmented voices and withered dreams. The Eternal's essence spread before him like an ocean of vines. Interconnected trauma, broken timelines, collapsed truths. And at the center, a boy, barefoot, cloaked in leaves, crying. Not a monster, not a god, just a soul that had never stopped breaking. Kale stepped closer. Is this who you were before you became Mir Veyne? The boy didn't answer. He simply looked up, his eyes hollow, tired, begging. Kale felt the ashen aura react. Not in aggression, but in empathy. Ashen wasn't destruction. It was absorption, evolution, adaptation. Kale knelt. You were chained by your pain. The boy nodded. So was I. He offered his hand. For a moment, eternity held its breath. Then, the boy took it. Sync complete. Ashen domain expanded. New skill unlocked. Verdant ash converts corrupted aura into adaptive shielding and life null fields. Relic sync detected. Soul brand is evolving. Kale's eyes snapped open. He stood in the center of the chamber, but the heart was gone. In its place, a forest of glowing ash trees had bloomed from the roots, silent and unmoving, with no more screams beneath the earth. The Eternal's physical form lay, slumped at his feet, silent, unmoving. Dead? No. Freed. Kale turned to his allies. Drake blinked. You just talked it to death. Kale sheathed soul brand, now darker, sleeker, and humming with resonance. No. He looked toward the surface. I forgave it. Verdant Maw dungeon cleared. Kale Arclight. Rank up. A S. Hybrid class evolution. Blade Soul Revenant. Phase 2. Requiem Path. Relic evolved. Soul brand. Oath Veil. New trait acquired. Aura nullification. Limited time field. The sky above Noctheron cleared for the first time in centuries. The marsh shimmered with light, ashen, soft, like embers at dawn. Lyra stepped beside him, staring at the changed landscape. You did it. Kale said nothing. He was listening to the silence. No chains, no screams, just peace, even if it wouldn't last. But then, a sound. Low, metal on stone. Zara emerged from the edge of the tree lean, a smirk tugging at her lips. Took you long enough. Kale eyed her. You knew this was coming. She shrugged. Knew? No. Suspected? Always. Then she tossed something to Kale. He caught it midair. A sealed scroll, branded with an unfamiliar sigil. A sun split in half. What is this? Zara's tone darkened. A summons. Kale unrolled it slowly. Sunspire directive. All S-rank hunters to report immediately. Emergency protocol, Risen 1, active. Reason, another dungeon has awakened. Not just any. The one tied to the first Eternal. Location, Zenith's Reach. Kale's grip tightened. Lyra stared. That's the highest point in Arena. Drake's smile was grim. Then I hope you like climbing. Kale turned away from a now peaceful marshland. Time to ascend. Time to face the mountain. The air at Zenith's Reach was thinner, colder, less a place, more a memory held in stone. Sprawling stairways carved into the cliffs wound upward like veins, pulsing faintly with old aura. Statues lined the mountain path, crumbling warriors, faceless kings, and broken gods. Each one radiated power that hadn't been touched in centuries. Kale stood at the base, wind clawing at his coat. The sky above wasn't blue. It was a canvas of silver clouds swirling around a singular storm eye. That storm pulsed with something ancient, something watching. It's not just a dungeon, Zara said beside him. It's a cathedral, one built before the records of man. Drake cracked his knuckles. Great. More creepy lore. Can we punch something yet? Lyra gripped her relic tighter, eyes flicking upward. We're not just climbing a mountain, are we? Kale didn't answer. He already felt it. This dungeon wasn't just reacting to his presence. It was waiting for him. Dungeon, Throne of the First. Type, Eternal Cradle / world altering. Danger level, unknown, classified above S. Reward, Eternal Crown. They climbed, step by step, aura by aura. But the mountain was alive. Each level brought challenges not just of strength, but of memory. At the first summit, illusions came, shades of fallen allies from raids long past. Ghost Kale had never known, but felt like he should have. At the second, time twisted. Lyra and Drake found themselves reliving their worst days. Childhood stolen by monsters, betrayal from comrades. But Kale? Kale saw himself. Alone, bleeding, kneeling before his brother's corpse in a burning city. The memory refused to fade. Even now, Drake broke the silence with a sudden shout, swinging at nothing. Enough of this mind game crap. Flames burst from his gauntlets, searing the illusions around him. If this Eternal wants to test me, come out and fight me already. No, Kale said softly. It wants us broken before we get there. He took another step, but it won't get what it wants. At the third summit, the landscape changed. The sky cracked open, and standing there, blocking the stairway forward, was a figure draped in obsidian and gold. Vale Solane, Sunspire Vanguard Commander. His aura was blinding, even restrained. A fusion of celestial and order. A bladed solar flare given form. Kale Arclight, Vale's voice boomed. Under Directive Risen 1, you are to halt your ascent. Kale didn't flinch. Why? The Eternal above must not be awakened. You've already fused with one. Another could corrupt you. Kale stepped forward. Or I could stop it before it corrupts the world. Vale's eyes narrowed. You're not strong enough. Drake smirked. Then let's test that. But Kale held up a hand. No. He faced Vale directly. Then stop me. The mountain roared. And Vale moved. What followed was less a duel, more a storm. Light clashed with ash. Solar slashes met spectral blade arcs. Kale's new skill, Verdant Ash, absorbed Vale's solar blasts into mirrored roots, redirecting them into auroral fields that collapsed even light itself. But Vale was relentless. A true SSS rank, forged in war. He forced Kale into the air, into the clouds themselves, into the storm circling the peak. Every strike of Vale's lance felt like the judgment of gods. But Kale adapted. Every moment, every blow. He was evolving mid-combat. And then, Kale dropped low, ducked under a solar arc, and whispered his line. Oh, what a strong aura. He rose with a spin, cloak burning, blade singing. Soulbrand, no. Oathvale sliced through the blinding light with black fire. And Vale staggered. Not from the hit, but from the realization. You weren't trying to win. Kale's eyes glowed. I was learning how to. Vale stepped back, aura faltering. Then he smiled. Not out of defeat, but pride. You might just be what we need after all. He lowered his weapon. The summit is yours, Kale Arclight. Kale nodded once and turned. Toward the peak, where the storm waited, where the first eternal slept, and where gods would rise. The summit of Zenith's reach was not made of stone. It was made of silence. Beyond the last step, the world felt muted, as if sound had been stripped from the air. The clouds circled a massive ring of obsidian thorns, curling around an altar of silver roots. At its center, something floated, barely visible, a cocoon of shifting light and shadows, chained by runes that pulsed with lost language. Kale stepped forward. Every fiber of his being told him to stop. And still, he walked. Lyra clutched her relic. That's it, isn't it? The first eternal. Zara's eyes narrowed. No, that's not the eternal. That's the vessel. Drake snorted. Looks fragile. Want me to smash it? No, Kale said quietly. Not yet. He could feel it. Not just power, but purpose. This was where the aura system began. The cocoon pulsed. Runes cracked. And a voice bled into the air. Not spoken, but heard. Who walks without chains? Kale's heart pounded. He took another step. Kale Arclight. The Ashen One. Blade Soul. Revenant. Scar by fire. Forged in ruin. A pause. Will you unchain me? Kale didn't speak. Because he remembered. The eye of eternity. The abyss had showed him. What would happen if another eternal woke and consumed the world? He looked to Lyra. To Drake. To Zara. And then back to the cocoon. Yes, he whispered. But not to free you. To face you. The silence broke. The cocoon shattered. Light and shadow erupted, slamming outward in waves of force. The sky fractured above as a form emerged. Neither man nor beast, cloaked in halos of twisting aura. Its face was a mask of porcelain flame, cracking with each breath. The first eternal had awakened. Then let judgment begin. Boss fight. Eternal. Hierarch of origin. Phase 1. Duality storm. The eternal raised one hand. Fire and frost spiraled into a cyclone of opposing elements. Drake roared, launching himself forward with the infernal gauntlets blazing. His punch met a pulse of anti-aura and was hurled back 50 meters. Shit, this one hits different. Lyra cast a dome of celestial light, shielding Zara and Kale as black frost rained down. Kale activated Ashen Domain, but it flickered, like the very world resisted him. Zara threw a wraith bell into the air. It chimed once, and the ground screamed. Echoes of forgotten warriors, chained in aura, rose and surged toward the eternal. But the eternal opened its palm, and they were erased. Completely. Aura is obedience. You are dissonance. Kale gritted his teeth. His blade split into two, Oathvale and Severbrand. His cloak burned with white embers. And as the eternal raised its second hand, Kale moved. Phase 2, Origin Pulse. Kale's blade clashed against an unseen force, a conceptual aura that slowed time, blurred memory, and threatened to rewrite him. But his ashen aura adapted. It burned. It howled. It evolved. Every cut, every parry, every dodge, Kale was learning. His movements shifted from blade soul precision to revenant unpredictability. Zara called out, "It's not invincible, Kale. It's fragmented. Its essence is bound to the altar." Kale turned, saw it, the glowing core beneath the altar, beating like a heart. That's what was keeping it grounded in this plane. But he couldn't reach it directly, not without drawing the Eternal's full focus. "I need cover." Lyra didn't hesitate. She poured her aura into the sun veil feather, creating a radiant bridge of light that cleaved through the storm. "Go!" Kale sprinted across the path. The Eternal turned. Kale shouted, not in fear, but fury. "Oh, what a strong aura!" Phase 3, Fracture Crown. The Eternal descended. Its mask split open, revealing countless faces, all versions of itself from parallel realities, crying out in unison. It began fusing attacks: celestial lightning, abyssal decay, beast-infused gravity, and whisper-type illusions. But Kale pushed through. At the altar, he struck, Oath Veil into the heart. The aura core shattered, and for a moment, everything froze. Kale stood in a blank world, opposite a human-looking version of the Eternal. Same mask, but only one face. "You seek freedom." Kale nodded. "From what?" "From the system. From fate. From us." Kale raised his blade again. "I'll burn it all, if I have to." The Eternal smiled and bowed. "Then earn your godhood." The vision vanished. Kale stood alone at the summit. The others rushed to him. The cocoon, the Eternal, the altar were all gone. But floating before Kale was a single crown, shifting between relic and aura. Zara whispered, awed, You didn't just defeat an Eternal. You absorbed its core." Drake shook his head. "We're so screwed." Lyra smiled, breathless. "We might also be saved." Kale picked up the relic. Relic obtained. Origin crown. Rank? And as the sky cleared, a new message appeared in the air. Title unlocked. Godslayer. Aura limit removed. New path unlocked. Transcendence rank. Status. Begin. Kale stood at the edge of the summit, wind howling like a beast unchained. The origin crown pulsed in his hand, neither warm nor cold, but alive. It wasn't a relic. It was a threshold. Behind him, Lyra steadied herself, pale and wide-eyed. Drake stared at the broken altar, knuckles cracked and bleeding. Zara said nothing, shadows shifting behind her as if listening for a voice only she could hear. No one spoke, because everyone felt it. The moment Kale absorbed the Eternal core, the world had changed. He turned toward the group, his ashen cloak fluttering. His eyes weren't glowing. They were burning, like molten silver edged with shadow. "I felt it," he said quietly. "The system isn't just flawed. It's rigged." Zara's expression darkened. "You saw the architect, didn't you?" Kale nodded. "What did it say?" He looked at his hand. "It said I'm not bound to fate. I'm a crack in it. Global system message, all hunters. A Godslayer walks. The eternal balance trembles. Prepare." The message shook the continents. Across Arena, hunters froze mid-battle. Guild towers went dark. Dungeons rumbled. Monsters howled. And deep in the Noctheron marsh, something ancient stirred. A figure, submerged beneath black roots and rotting sky, opened one glowing eye. The Ashen One rises. Location: Sunspire Citadel. Vale Solane slammed her fist against the crystalline screen as the Godslayer message flickered again. Council members shouted, scrambled, panicked. But Vale didn't move. She stared at the name glowing on the screen. Kale Arclight, class, transcendent, locked. "He was never supposed to live," she whispered. "You promised me he would die in that dungeon." Behind her, a cloaked figure said nothing. "Did the system lie to you too?" Vale asked. "No," said the voice. "It showed me the truth." "Then why help me hide it?" The figure stepped forward. Because under the cloak was Drake Arclight, Kale's brother. "I'm not hiding it," he said. "I'm waiting for him." Location: Ember Deep, ruined watchtower. Kale and the others descended zeniths, reached slowly. The journey down almost more harrowing than the battle above. He could feel his aura resonating differently now. The world didn't just react to him, it bent around him. Drake nudged him. So, you're God now. That mean I can't punch you anymore. Kale smirked. You can try, but I'm not healing you after. Lyra walked beside them, quieter than usual. You okay? Kale asked her. She hesitated. I saw it too, when the Eternal cracked open. A glimpse. He stopped. What did you see? Lyra met his gaze. My own death. The air tensed. But it wasn't a warning, she continued. It was a choice. Like something was asking, will you still follow him if this is how it ends? And I didn't even hesitate, she said. I'm with you. To the end. Kale's chest tightened. Before he could speak, Zara interrupted, tone grave. We don't have time to settle emotions. Look, she pointed skyward. Rifts had opened. Not dungeon gates. God gates. Domains of Eternals spilling into the world, leaking chaos into Arena. Kale clenched his fist. They're waking up. Elsewhere, domain of hollow rain. A pale woman sat upon a throne of glass, her eyes blindfolded with gold chains. Around her, whispers echoed, memories twisted into song. The first Eternal had fallen. She felt it and smiled. So the Ashen God walks. She raised one hand, then let the second trumpet sound. From her finger dropped a single tear, and from it, an army of wraithborn heralds erupted across the continent. Back to Kale. As night fell over Ember Deep, the party made camp. There was no real sleep anymore, not when the stars themselves were blinking out. Kale sat alone. He stared at the origin crown beside him, then to his blade, then to his hand, and finally, to the horizon. He didn't know if he was a hero, a weapon, a mistake, but he knew one thing. The Eternals had ruled long enough. And now, he was walking toward them, not as a challenger, but as their executioner. The storm hadn't stopped since the origin crown fractured. Kale walked through the downpour, each step weighed down not by exhaustion, but by memory. Lightning cracked overhead, but his mind replayed only one thing, the way the architect smiled. You were forged for collapse. He didn't tell the others what that meant. Drake trudged beside him, with hair slicked back, aura barely restrained. Behind them, Lyra guided Zara, whose body had grown colder since Zenith's reach. Her misty aura now clung to her like a shadow that breathed. They reached a cliffside overlooking the ruins of Hailcrest Outpost, once a thriving guild base. Now, it was a crater filled with scorched black bone and shattered relic fragments. What the hell happened here? Drake muttered. Zara blinked slowly. A failed descent. Someone tried to force a god gate open. And, Kale asked, they succeeded. Briefly, as if summoned by her words, a wave of aura swept over them. Thick, putrid, ancient. The kind of aura that didn't just exist, infected. Lyra flinched, nearly dropping her staff. It's wrong. This isn't Eternal. It's something else. No, Kale said quietly. It's older. Suddenly, a voice echoed across the ruins. You're early, Ashen One. They turned. From the crater emerged a being wrapped in living chains, its face veiled by dozens of broken masks. Its aura was unreadable, like a symphony played in reverse. Zara stepped back. An Echo Lord. Kale drew his blade. I thought they were just myths. They were, Zara said, until you shattered the crown. The Echo Lord raised one hand, and the dead rose. Dozens, no, hundreds of broken aura users. Hunters who'd fallen in past raids. Their bodies twisted, faces hollow, but still carrying their relics. Lyra gasped. They still have their aura signatures. Drake grinned. All right, no more holding back. The battle ignited. Kale surged forward, his blade cutting clean through the first line of wraith echoes. But they didn't fall. They split, reforming like corrupted clones. He gritted his teeth. They're mimics. Zara tossed her wraith bell into the air. It rang once, freezing the nearest echoes in place as their aura echoes began to unravel. Lyra summoned a radiant dome of light, shielding them as she chanted. Solar reprieve. Drake laughed like a demon, his infernal gauntlets igniting with beast fire. Finally, a fight that bites back. He charged into the swarm, fists shattering skulls, fire-consuming corrupted souls. But they kept coming. Kale's eyes narrowed. He closed his aura, then reopened it, ashen mode pulsing like wildfire. "Adapt," he whispered. In an instant, his aura shifted. The next wave of attacks phased through him. He blurred, then reappeared behind the Echo Lord. "You call me early," Kale said. He raised his blade. "But I never show up unarmed." Ashen skill, soul scorch. His strike cleaved through the Echo Lord's veils, exposing a core of glass filled with screaming memories. It imploded, collapsing inward with a scream that wasn't sound but grief. The remaining echoes dropped. Silence. Then rain. Kale stood in the crater, steam rising from his shoulders. Zara approached, eyes wide. "You just killed a fragment of time." Kale didn't turn. "I'm starting to think time wants me dead anyway." Lyra reached out to him. "Kale, what's happening to you?" He looked back, eyes dimming. "I don't know," he whispered, "but I think I'm forgetting who I was before all this." Somewhere beyond Orinia, the architect's domain. The architect watched the battle through a shifting veil. One of its lesser mouths whispered, "Still he rises." Another mouth replied, "Still he chooses." The third one, smaller, almost childlike, trembled. "What if he breaks the cycle?" The central eye blinked once. "Then we start again." The dungeon beneath Hailcrest was dying. It groaned and wept through its broken corridors, its walls bleeding aura like cracked veins. Every step Kale took echoed like thunder, not from the sound, but from what followed him. Ashen trails slithered behind his boots, warping the dungeon's pulse. Aura's sensitive stone flickered like it couldn't decide whether to acknowledge his presence or reject it entirely. They were deep now, too deep for natural light to follow. "Kale," Lyra whispered, gripping her staff tighter. "We shouldn't be down here. Not without backup." Drake scoffed. "We are the backup." Zara said nothing. She walked slightly ahead, fingers grazing the wall like she was reading the dungeon's memory. Kale didn't stop moving. His eyes were distant again, like part of him wasn't even in his body. Zara glanced back. "You're listening to the voices again, aren't you?" "I don't hear them," Kale replied. "Exactly," she said. "That's worse." They reached a massive chamber, dome-like and eerily quiet. At its center, floating just above a cracked pedestal, was a crimson shard, a piece of the broken origin crown. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Faint but ancient. Kale stepped forward. Drake grabbed his shoulder. "Wait, we don't know what it." Too late. Kale touched it. The world blinked. Then it shattered. Memory realm, revenant pulse. Kale stood alone in an endless field of glass. Above him, the sky was a mirror. Below, the ground shimmered with fragments of his past. Moments of blood, fire, and faces. So many faces. Some he remembered. Most he didn't. He took a breath. Ah, what a strong aura. But this time, he wasn't talking to an enemy. He was talking to himself. A figure stood across from him, identical in form, but cloaked in full revenant armor. Ashen fire bled from the figure's eyes, and its blade shimmered with every aura Kale had ever absorbed. It didn't speak. It just charged. Kale blocked the strike, sparks igniting from the clash. Every blow that followed cracked the mirrored ground, each slash unveiling old pain. Father's death, Ember Brood's fall, Zara's warnings, Lyra's tears. "This is what I've become," Kale asked, parrying another strike. "A monster?" The revenant Kale tilted its head, then vanished. From behind, a whisper, "No, you're becoming what the world needs." Kale turned, slicing through the voice, but no one was there. Only a mirror. And in that mirror, he saw something new. Horns, black wings, glowing runes pulsing beneath his skin. A god? A curse? Or both? Back in the real world, Kale's body dropped to one knee. His veins flickered with black gold aura. Zara rushed forward. "We have to sever the link." "Too late," Lyra said, eyes wide. "He's fusing with it." Kale's eyes shot open, but they weren't his eyes anymore. Ashen Revenant mode. Phase 1, Pulse of the Forgotten. Abilities unlocked. Echo Rend. Slashes that duplicate aura echoes for delayed damage. Ash Rebirth. Revives once per day with enhanced stats. Leaves a soul fragment behind. Mirrored Grief. gains increased power against enemies carrying regret or suppressed emotions. Kale stood slowly, breathing deep. The aura in the room bent toward him like gravity. The shard of the origin crown floated back to its pedestal, now dimmed. Zara stared at him. "How much did you see?" Kale didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward the sealed gate at the end of the chamber, something that hadn't been there before. A door made of bone and flame. Carved above it, in ancient runes. "This gate leads to the second eternal." Drake cracked his knuckles. Finally, Lyra looked terrified. Zara, unreadable. Kale simply whispered, "Open it." The Revenant walks. The sealed door loomed ahead like a forgotten god's final breath, tall, curved, and fused with ivory bone and seething flame. Its heat wasn't just physical. It whispered, clawing at the mind, dragging up regrets and doubts like it knew how to unmake you. Even Lyra flinched just standing near it. Kale didn't flinch. His aura simmered low but dense, like embers compressed into a star. He raised his hand. The gate responded, runes igniting one by one, each pulse syncing with his heartbeat. The final rune pulsed thrice before melting into the door. A hiss, a screech, then silence. Then it opened. A violent, roaring wind burst out, laced with screams that didn't belong in this world. It nearly knocked Lyra off her feet. Drake leaned into it, teeth bared like a wolf tasting storm air. Zara narrowed her eyes, already stepping into the dark beyond the threshold. Kale followed, and the dungeon changed forever. Zone, hollow depths, eternal ruin chamber. They were inside a coliseum, massive, circular, and drowned in black mist. The floor was etched with ancient battle scars, some still glowing faint red, like the fights that happened here had never really stopped. Floating in the center of the Colosseum was a chained figure. 10 arms, 6 wings, its eyes stitched shut, and yet it saw everything. Zara whispered, "Eternal Noctherian, the Mist Tyrant." Kale's aura flared instinctively. Lyra's grip tightened on her staff. "That's an Eternal." "No," Zara said softly. "That's a sleeping Eternal." Kale stepped forward, and it moved. The chains around Noctherian rattled. A mist claw unfurled, inches long but heavy with power. Its wings cracked slightly open. From all around the Colosseum, monstrous howls echoed. Doors burst open. Creatures spilled out, twisted echoes of fallen hunters, or corrupted revenants. Crawlers made of stitched-together parts. Forgotten guild members that had been consumed, then reanimated by Noctherian's curse. They didn't hesitate. They charged. Battle commenced. Mistborn trial. Kale surged forward. Ash step. He blinked past 3 revenants, his blade already cleaving through aura armor. Echo Rend activated on contact, delayed cuts erupting across their torsos seconds after the first strike. Lyra shouted, "Sanctum Shield," a radiant dome of light forming around her, and Zara, as a wave of crawlers, surged their way. Drake didn't wait. "Come to Daddy." He erupted in flames, the infernal gauntlets roaring as he punched clean through 2 hulking mist beasts. Their cores shattered from the shockwave alone. Zara chanted under her breath, the Wraith Bell tolling once. Souls wailed from her relic, spiraling around her like protective phantoms, slicing into enemies that got too close. But Kale wasn't just fighting. He was studying. Every enemy held a piece of the Eternal's curse. And with each strike, his ashen aura reacted, absorbing, adapting, growing. Kale Arclight, adaptive aura sync, mist variant unlocked. Skill, Shroud Veyne, can weave shadows into his blade for phased attacks that bypass armor. Trait, Fog Blood, immune to mist-based illusions and debuffs. Passive, Eternal Pulse, can sense the true location of an Eternal within 100 meters. But the real danger hadn't even begun. As the last crawler fell, silence returned. The chained Eternal opened its stitched eyes, and then it spoke, not with a voice, but directly into Kale's soul. "You have tasted grief, but not despair." The Colosseum trembled. One by one, the chains broke, and the Eternal began to descend. "Everyone fall back," Zara shouted. "Now!" Kale didn't move. He stared straight into Noctherian's unraveling form. Black wings unfurled. Mists thickened, and a throne of bones rose beneath the Eternal's feet. Kale gripped his blade. His aura surged, twisting around him in a spiral of ash and silver. He whispered his line, not to intimidate, not even to declare, but because he meant it. Oh, what a strong aura! Noctherian's wings beat once, and the world bled. Every ounce of mist in the Colosseum surged toward the throne, condensing around the Eternal like a cloak of living shadow. Aura pressure poured from him in waves, thick enough to drown even S-rank hunters. Lyra dropped to one knee, her breathing sharp and shallow. Drake staggered back, teeth gritted. "Kale," Lyra whispered. "You can't face that thing alone." Kale didn't respond. He stepped forward, and the moment he did, the Eternal moved. Noctherian appeared in front of him with no warning, as if reality skipped a frame. One of its claws lashed out, shattering the stone floor where Kale had just stood. But Kale had vanished. Ash stepped, behind the Eternal now. His blade ignited. Soul scorch. He slashed upward, and for a heartbeat, the Colosseum felt empty, silent, like all air had been sucked from it. Then the Eternal's back erupted in black mist and light. It screeched, reeling, wings twisting around it defensively. But Kale didn't stop. He moved again, flickering through the mist like a phantom. With every strike, his aura adapted further, matching Noctherian's rhythm, evolving in real time. Kale Arclight, aura, evolution triggered. Ashen Domain, Phase 1. Ashen Domain, Phase 1 Sunder Mist. Inside this domain, all mist-based abilities are nullified. Grants Kale total visibility and aura suppression over enemies within a 30-meter radius. Adaptive sync rate doubled. From the stands, Zera's eyes widened. He's syncing with an Eternal's domain. That's impossible. Drake laughed like he was watching a divine storm. TCH. That bastard Kale. He's not human anymore. Lyra didn't cheer. She saw Kale's eyes. Burning. Focused. Empty. Noctherian screamed. And then the Eternal changed shape. Its wings collapsed inward, its form shrinking, refining. When the mist cleared, a humanoid figure stood where the chained abomination had been. Pale skin, eyes stitched but bleeding light. A blade of bone in one hand. A second aura form, its true combat form. And in that moment, it rushed Kale. Faster than before. The Colosseum walls cracked just from the aftershock. Kale met the strike head-on. Steel clashed with bone. The ground beneath them shattered. The sky above the ruin split. And still they moved, strike for strike. Kale's ashen aura wrapped around his limbs like armor, blocking fatal hits. His blade hummed with evolving rage. He pushed back hard. Burnout dash. Followed by Echo Rend. Noctherian reeled, but then retaliated with a shriek of shadow, a massive aura wave that cut through the air like a blade. Kale took it head-on, was flung back into the Colosseum wall, crushed through it. "Kale!" Lyra screamed. Zera stepped forward, but a hand stopped her. Drake. "No, let him finish it." From the rubble, Kale rose slowly. Blood dripped from his lip. His vision blurred, but he smiled. Now we're getting somewhere. His aura ignited. All of it. No limiters. No restraint. The entire Colosseum trembled under the sheer pressure of it. And the mist? It vanished. Kale Arclight, aura synchronization, 89%. Ashen Domain Phase 2, Gravelight Convergence unlocked. All defeated souls in a 50m radius are pulled into Kale's aura. For every soul absorbed, Kale's attack speed and damage increase. Final skill unlocked. Revenant's Crown, locked until 100%. He leapt. Time slowed. Their blades met again, and again, blurring to the naked eye. Mist exploded, dissipated, then returned. Every swing was death. Every breath, war. Then Noctherian made a mistake. It overcommit. Kale caught its wrist, slammed it down, and drove his blade through its torso. But the Eternal laughed. You think death means victory? Its core pulsed, and the Colosseum shook violently. From the shadows, something massive stirred. A gate. Noctherian's true plan wasn't to kill Kale. It was to open the next eternal gate. To call them. Kale's hand trembled. Too late. No. His aura surged one last time, reaching, grasping, pulling every fragment of the Eternal's essence into him. The Colosseum collapsed around him. Noctherian screamed as its soul was devoured. Ashen light consumed everything. And then, silence. Kale stood alone in the crater, eyes glowing white. Noctherian's corpse dissolved to mist behind him. His voice was hoarse, but still came out. Oh, what a strong aura. Kale stood unmoving in the ruin of the Colosseum. His blade, cracked but intact, was still in his hand. The remnants of Noctherian's aura drifted like embers in the wind, pulled into the void of Kale's ashen domain, swallowed without trace. But the silence didn't last, because that gate, was still open. It hung in the sky like a bleeding wound in reality. The color around it was wrong. Not darkness, not void, something less than either. Screams echoed from within, not loud, not chaotic, just steady. Familiar. Voices of hunters long dead. Lyra ran toward Kale, her celestial aura shielding her from the heat and static that crackled off him. Kale, close the gate. We don't know what's coming through. I do, Kale replied, voice low. He didn't look back. Behind him, Zara materialized from shadow, already analyzing the gate. Her eyes narrowed. That's not a dungeon gate, she said, deadly calm. That's a resonance breach, a door left open between layers. Not just to another dungeon, to the remnants between realities. Drake cracked his knuckles. So what's coming out? Another Eternal? No, Zara said. Something older. System alert. Aura system overload detected. Ashen domain. Instability 73%. Warning. Aura contamination imminent. Kale gripped his chest. He could feel it. The Eternal's essence hadn't been fully purified. Its hatred, its memory, still pulsed inside him. It whispered. It waited. His aura flared again, forcefully stabilizing his core. Not yet. The gate pulsed again. And then, a figure stepped through. Humanoid. No aura. But every single person in the Colosseum dropped to their knees the moment it arrived. Even Zara's eyes widened. Impossible. Kale's jaw tightened. You feel it too? Lyra trembled beside him. That's not an Eternal. It's not even a monster. It's a godless echo, Zara said. An entity that once killed an Eternal and refused divinity. The figure looked like a boy, no older than Kale, but wrapped in bandages and shadow. No mouth, no eyes. Yet Kale knew he was being watched. The boy raised a single hand, and every light in the Colosseum went out. Then he spoke, not with words, but with memory. Kale's mind flooded. Scenes of ancient battles, cities lost in a single breath, Eternals bowing, and this thing standing alone. Unbent, untouched by fate. A true anomaly. Then it said one word. Unworthy. And it moved. Kale barely blocked. The boy's strike came faster than light. His blade shattered on contact. Blood flew from Kale's mouth as he was flung into a collapsed tower. But he stood. Barely. His aura screamed. He screamed with it. Ashen domain, grave-like convergence. He called it all, every soul he had absorbed, every echo, into a single spear of light and dark. He hurled it at the echo. It vanished. The boy was already behind him. A hand pierced Kale's back, but the echo didn't kill him. It leaned in and whispered, "Come find me when you're more than a shadow." Then it stepped back into the gate, and the gate vanished. Silence. Kale fell to his knees, coughing blood. Drake ran forward, catching him. What the hell was that? You just fought an Eternal. How is this thing stronger? Zara didn't answer, because she was too busy looking at Kale's back, where a mark now pulsed, black, glowing faintly. A brand. The mark of an echo. System notification. You have been marked. Echo trial initiated. Path to godhood is now active. Kale clenched his fists. He could still feel the boy's aura. Still hear that single, damning word. Unworthy. He wouldn't stay that way. Not for long. Kale didn't move for a long time. The sky above the shattered Colosseum slowly stitched itself back together. Whatever breach the godless echo had opened was now sealed, but the scent of it still lingered. Not smoke, not blood, memory. Drake crouched nearby, keeping watch while pretending not to care. You gonna sit there forever, or are you gonna get stronger already? Kale spat out blood. Funny. Thought you wanted the next round. Oh, I do. But not while you're looking like a crushed spirit core. Lyra approached silently, her aura dim but warm. She knelt beside Kale and reached for him with glowing fingers. Let me help. Kale didn't pull away. For once, the light poured into his wounds, closing gashes but not the pain in his core. That damage was deeper, spiritual, the kind that doesn't heal easy. Zara spoke up from the ruins of the observation deck, where her cloak swayed like mist and wind. He didn't kill you. That's not mercy. That's a declaration. Kale glanced at her. What do you mean? She looked down at him, eyes cold. He saw you as potential, a rival. You're on a path now that only one being can walk at a time. She paused, and there are already others. System update. New objective. Echo trial initiated. Godless path. Progress 1%. Next trial location. Zenith's Reach. Time limit. 6 days. A cold wind swept through the broken city as the announcement echoed in Kale's mind. He stood shakily, gaze shifting toward the horizon. Zenith's Reach. One of the 7 regions of Arena, untouched by most due to its sheer altitude and unpredictable aura storms. It was said only one guild, Skyburn, operated there, and even they rarely left the floating citadel that guarded the peak. Drake whistled. Figures. Trial to become a god? Gotta start by climbing one. Kale didn't smile, because it wasn't just a trial. It was the beginning of war. Back at the edge of the ruins, hunters began to regroup. The broadcast of Kale defeating an Eternal had spread already. Guild leaders, nobles, rogue sects, they all saw it. And now they wanted answers. Or blood. But Kale had no time to entertain any of them. As the group moved to leave, Lyra spoke up, softly. What happens when we get there? Kale didn't look back. I'll find the next echo. And if you fail? Kale clenched his fist, ash swirling around him. I won't. Elsewhere, deep beneath the sands of Dusker Wastes, a chained beast stirred. Its eyes opened, red, ancient, furious. The chains began to crack, and across the desert, a tower that had not fallen in 1,000 years began to burn from the inside. A voice whispered, Another has entered the path. Prepare the rites. The air at Zenith's Reach was thin, biting, and electric. Kale's boots landed hard against the floating stone platform, barely holding back a flinch as the pressure of the region settled on his shoulders. Aura didn't just exist here. It screamed. Every breath was infused with energy so dense it prickled against the skin like glass shards. Okay. Drake cracked his neck, his beast flame aura flaring briefly to ward off the pressure. This place is alive. Lyra touched her relic, Sunveil feather, shielding herself in a soft shimmer of golden light. No wonder most hunters never come up here. How can anyone live in this pressure? They don't, Zara said, stepping forward without a hint of struggle. They survive. And even then, only those who've bent their aura to obey the winds. Before them rose sky-burned Citadel, a labyrinthine fortress carved into a mountain peak that defied gravity. It hovered miles above sea level, held in place by ancient relic anchors and aura engines long forgotten by the rest of the world. The gates opened as they approached, not with welcome, but warning. A dozen armored figures stepped out, each adorned in sleek, lightweight armor designed for aerial combat. Their helms bore a single crest, a downward blade crossed by wings. At their center stood a man with jagged silver hair, half his face wrapped in ancient cloth etched with runes. State your purpose, he said coldly, voice reverberating through the wind like thunder. Kale didn't flinch. I'm here for the next echo trial. The man's I narrowed. You are the Ashen One, the one who stood against an Eternal. Kale nodded once. The guards moved as if to block the path, but the silver-haired leader raised a hand. Let him in. Vale Solane will want to see him. Inside Skyburn. The architecture was unlike anything they'd seen. Instead of corridors, there were aura bridges suspended over endless drops, chambers that shifted mid-step, and glyphs that glowed in response to one's aura rank. The deeper they walked, the more Kale could feel it. Something ancient was watching. They arrived in a vast hall surrounded by stained glass windows that shimmered with moving light. At its center stood a woman clad in white and steel, her aura radiant but caged. "Kale Arclight," she said without turning. "You're not what I expected." "Vale Solane," Zara whispered. "Leader of Skyburn. Sunspire's equal. Maybe stronger." Vale turned, her gaze piercing. "You're walking the echo path. That makes you either a fool or our last hope." Kale's voice was steady. "I don't need hope. I need power." Vale's lips twitched into a slight smile, spoken like someone who's tasted loss. She stepped closer. "The trial is sealed behind the storm vault. No outsider has ever entered. But you're not just anyone." She extended a hand, revealing a shard of crystal, pulsing with familiar energy. "Take this, a fragment of the sky WYRM, the guardian of the vault. You'll need it to even get near the gate." Kale took it. The shard pulsed against his palm, and for a brief second he saw it. A massive, draconic form bound in lightning and cloud, chained to the peak like a weapon never meant to be unleashed. New trial, Vault of the Sky WYRM. Objective, survive the storm. Awaken the beast. Claim its power. Warning, aura overload expected. Team fatalities likely. Proceed at your own risk. Later that night, the group prepared outside the vault. Zara stood alone, watching the skies. "Something doesn't feel right." Lyra glanced up. "The trial?" "No." Her eyes narrowed. "The sky. It's trembling." And then it happened. A ripple across the clouds. A tear in the sky. And descending through it, wrapped in shadow and lightning, came a figure cloaked in jagged silver and ancient wings. Kale felt his blood turn to ice. "That's not the sky WYRM." Drake bared his teeth. "No, that's a herald." The figure landed with a soundless quake, its face covered by a shifting mask of shattered stars. It raised a hand, and the vault door behind them shattered before they even reached it. "Who dares?" the being said, its voice like a broken choir. "To challenge the sky." Kale stepped forward, grip tightening around his blade. Oh, what a strong aura. Lightning fractured the heavens. The figure that descended from the tear in the sky brought not just pressure, but presence. Every strand of aura in the region reacted violently, like prey trembling before a predator's approach. Wind currents reversed. Glyphs across Skyburn Citadel dimmed. Even the sun seemed to falter behind shifting clouds. The herald landed with elegance and malice, floating just above the cracked platform before the now-ruined vault of the sky WYRM. Kale's jaw tensed. His instinct screamed. Not fear, focus. This wasn't a trial anymore. This was a message. "I thought the vault was sealed," Lyra whispered behind him, shielding her eyes from the intensity. "No one's supposed to be able to reach it." "They're not," Zara answered quietly, lips barely moving. "Unless they're not from our realm." The herald finally spoke. "I am no mere echo, no beast, no relic-bound memory." Its voice fractured like shattered glass and stitched itself back together between syllables. "I'm the Skyfire Herald, one of the 13, and you, Ashen One, have drawn too close to what should remain sealed." Kill didn't blink. "So you've come to stop me?" "No." The herald tilted its head. "I'll contest you. If you survive, you may proceed. If you die, the balance remains. Then let's skip the ceremony." Kale's aura exploded into life. Ashen light burst from beneath his feet, coiling and shifting like a dragon made of smoke and embers. His shadow grew longer, more jagged. The burned scars across his body glowed faintly, residual energy from his clash with the eye of eternity still lingering in his veins. Ashen Domain Flicker Stage. Effect: all aura reactions heightened. Adaptive counteractive. Time dilation in 5-meter radius. The herald responded in kind. Its cloak dissolved into wings of crackling lightning and searing wind. Then came a first strike. Kale moved forward, not to dodge, but to meet it head-on. Blades clashed. Aura screamed. His blade, now half fused with the revenant core, deflected the herald's lightning claw by a hair. Sparks danced along his shoulder, burning through the fabric of his tunic, but his grip didn't falter. Behind him, Drake flared his own aura, prepared to jump in. Not yet, Zara said firmly, holding Drake back. This is Kale's echo. Drake snarled. What if he dies? Then we're all dead anyway. Kale's mindscape, the Ashen Heart. In the space between strikes, Kale's vision split. He found himself back inside his own aura space, the Ashen Heart, a realm of molten black skies and floating memory fragments. The adaptive nature of his aura meant it didn't just evolve, it remembered. A new fragment floated into view, a sliver of a storm dragon's wing, devoured long ago. And beside it, a voice, his own, but older, more fractured. This one fights like a concept made flesh. Don't match its speed. Disrupt its pattern. Overwhelm its memory. Kale's eyes snapped open. The strategy was clear. Back in the real world, the Herald moved like thunder incarnate. Every strike carried arcs of unstable power meant to vaporize. But Kale was learning. Each clash was a download. Each dodge, a calibration. He shifted mid-fight, letting his ashen aura echo the Herald's energy signature, sinking for only fractions of a second, long enough to strike back with increasingly effective counterattacks. He ducked under a spinning laceration of pure wind, twisted behind the Herald, and delivered a burst of soul fire into its back. The Herald staggered. A mimic, it whispered. Cursed evolution. No wonder the Eye feared you. Kale didn't pause. You're damn right it did. He activated Soul Scorch, Stage 2, a pulse of withering fire meant to disrupt aura circuitry. The Herald recoiled, its form warping from its stable shape into flickering instability. But then, bam! Kale was punched through a stone pillar, ribs cracking. The Herald blurred, eyes ignited in golden blue flame. You adapt, it growled, but your will is still human. Mortal. Kale stood, blood dripping from his mouth, blade dragging. That's your mistake, he spat, grinning through the pain. I'm not here to be human. Elsewhere, Sunspire Council Hall. Back at the Capitol, an emergency glyph ignited in the Council's central mirror array. Vale Solane, Lyra's former superior, turned sharply as the mirror shifted to reveal flickering visions of the Herald. Impossible, she muttered. They're accelerating. The Heralds were never meant to descend this early. A voice from the shadows echoed. Then perhaps the boy is the variable. Back at Skyburn, Kale locked eyes with the Herald. No more feints. No more analysis. He activated Ashen Veil. Phase drift. Time warped within a 10-meter radius. The world bent. Kale vanished, appearing behind the Herald, slicing into its side with a soul-charged strike that tore through its storm-woven hide. The Herald screamed, not in pain but fury. I see now. You are not merely echo-born. It thrust its claw into its own chest. Then witness a fraction of what waits beyond. It ripped open a core of radiant lightning, and the world turned white. A blast echoed for miles. Skyburn Citadel shook. Lyra was forced to shield the entire team with her relic, struggling to hold the solar veil as the shockwave passed. When it cleared, Kale was on one knee, his aura flickering. The Herald hovered above him, form now, fracturing, unstable. You've earned the right, it said, voice cracking with residual power. The vault opens and the sky WYRM awakens. Then, with a final pulse of energy, the Herald vanished into scattered light. Kale collapsed. Later, inside the vault, Kale awoke in a healing chamber, Lyra at his side. Drake leaned against the wall, arms crossed, clearly annoyed, but also impressed. You fought an interdimensional lightning god, Drake muttered, and lived. Kale sat up slowly, wincing. Barely, Zara stepped into the room, holding a scroll sealed with lightning script. You passed the vault trial. The sky WYRM awaits. Kale looked down at his hands. Burned, cracked, but stronger. He wasn't the same. And deep in his core, something new stirred. Not just power. Memory. From the Herald itself. Aura, Sync acquired. Skyfire residue. Temporary fusion access. Stormwalker form. Limited use. Fusion compatibility. 13%. Kale stood. The next step wasn't just survival. It was conquest. The air in the vault was thick with the scent of ancient stone and the power of forgotten gods. Kale stood at the entrance, his hand on the cold, jagged door, feeling a hum deep within his bones. It was the type of sensation he had grown familiar with over the past few months, a dangerous, unsettling tingle that accompanied the unknown. Beside him, Lyra's healing aura flickered faintly. Her quiet footsteps were a contrast to the pounding of his own heart. She wasn't saying anything, but Kale could tell she was uneasy. They had both seen countless dungeons, but nothing like this, nothing this deep, this ancient. The vault, rumored to be the resting place of relics, more powerful than any living being could fathom, was something entirely different. "This place feels wrong," Lyra muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale glanced at her, noting the hesitation in her eyes. She had never spoken this way before, always brimming with a quiet confidence, even in the most dangerous of situations. But here, in the heart of the vault, everything felt different. "Stay close," Kale said, his voice steady, though a knot formed in his stomach. His own aura felt strained, as if the very walls of the vault were pushing against his power. Lyra nodded, her hand resting on the sun veil feather that hung around her neck. The relic's light flickered like a dying star, a reminder of how far they had come, and how much further they had to go. Kale took a deep breath, then pushed the heavy stone door open. The vault's interior was vast and dark, the flickering of their auras casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. A massive chamber stretched before them, filled with towering pillars and deep cracks in the floor. Faint echoes of something ancient reverberated through the air. "This place is older than anything I've seen," Kale murmured, his voice low and reverent. Suddenly, a loud creak echoed through the chamber, and a low growl reverberated from the darkness. Kale's senses sharpened immediately. The ground beneath his feet trembled, and the very air around him seemed to crackle with energy. "It's coming," Kale muttered, his hand instinctively reaching for his sword, ashen ember. From the shadows, the creature appeared, a massive, serpentine beast, its scales glimmering like the night sky. It was the Sky Wyrm, one of the legendary monsters of Arena, said to guard the deepest and most dangerous vaults. Its eyes gleamed with a predatory hunger, and its aura was palpable, dense, oppressive, and tinged with the power of the ancients. Lyra stepped back instinctively, but Kale's hand shot out to steady her. "Stay behind me," he commanded, his voice hard. He wasn't sure what they were facing, but he could feel the weight of destiny pressing down on them. This fight would decide their future, and perhaps the fate of all Arena. The Sky Wyrm let out a low, rumbling growl, its tail coiling like a whip, causing the air around them to warp. Kale's heart raced as he took a step forward, his aura flaring outwards. Ember Veil. A ring of fiery energy surrounded Kale, shimmering with a heat so intense it warped the air. The Sky Wyrm recoiled, hissing in frustration as its own aura flickered, but quickly recovered, narrowing its eyes at him. The battle had begun. Kale didn't wait for the Wyrm to make the first move. He dashed forward, his feet barely touching the ground as his burnout dash propelled him into the air. His sword, now alight with the ashen flame, swung in a wide arc toward the beast. The Wyrm reacted quickly, dodging with an impossible grace for such a massive creature, its scales shimmering as it slithered to the side. Kale's eyes narrowed, analyzing the creature's movements. The Wyrm wasn't just physically powerful, it was intelligent. It knew how to fight. "Lyra," Kale called out without breaking his focus. "Get ready." From behind him, Lyra raised the sun veil feather, summoning a protective shield of radiant light. The Wyrm recoiled slightly at the brightness, its eyes flickering with something resembling confusion. That was the opening Kale needed. He charged again, faster this time, his blade trailing a line of ash and fire. The Sky WIRM hissed and lunged, its massive jaws snapping shut with a deafening crack. Kale twisted midair, narrowly avoiding its bite as he aimed his sword directly at the creature's side. Soul Scorch, Kale roared, unleashing the full force of his aura. The ashen flame exploded outward in a blast of concentrated heat, scorching the WRM's scales and leaving deep, smoldering gashes in its body. The creature howled in agony, thrashing wildly. For a moment, Kale thought it might break free and retreat. But the WIRM was not like any creature they had faced before. It was a guardian of something ancient, something that must not be disturbed. The WIRM recoiled for a moment before striking again, this time with a burst of lightning from its tail. Kale barely managed to block it, the force of the strike sending him crashing into a pillar. He gritted his teeth, feeling his bones creak under the strain. Lyra's voice broke through the haze of pain. "Kale, you need to finish this. It's drawing on the vault's power." Kale's eyes widened. The vault, of course. The WIRM was feeding off the very energy that had kept it alive for centuries. With that realization, Kale's mind sharpened. The key wasn't to destroy the WIRM. It was to cut off its source of power. "Lyra, keep it distracted," Kale barked. Lyra nodded and raised her relic higher, focusing all her energy into a brilliant burst of solar light. The WIRM recoiled, its body shuddering as if trying to protect itself from the light. Kale took a deep breath, gathering every ounce of power he had. The WRM's power flickered, unstable. This was his moment. Kale surged forward, his sword crackling with ashen energy, and drove it straight into the WRM's chest, deep into the heart of its dark aura. The beast let out a final, horrific scream as Kale's blade pierced through its core. The ground shook, and the vault trembled as the WRM's life force drained away. Its form began to disintegrate, its body turning to ash and dust. As the creature fell, Kale staggered back, breathless, his body shaking from the effort. But there was no time to rest. A low rumble echoed through the vault, and from the depths, a dark shape began to rise. It wasn't over. The true test had only just begun. The vault groaned beneath them, its ancient walls vibrating with a force that felt almost alive. The air had grown heavier, thick with the presence of something far older than the WIRM they had just slain. The ground beneath their feet was no longer stable, cracking as though the vault itself were protesting Kale's intrusion. Kale staggered to his feet, the adrenaline of battle still coursing through his veins, though it was quickly being replaced by a bone-deep weariness. He glanced back at Lyra, who was panting, sweat glistening on her forehead as she kept her hand firmly on the sunveil feather. Her healing aura flickered with exhaustion, but she still stood strong. "We've only just begun," Kale murmured, his voice barely audible over the rumbling of the vault. Lyra's eyes were wide, her expression a mix of concern and confusion. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "What's happening?" "I don't know," Kale admitted, his grip tightening on his sword, ashen ember. "But whatever it is, it's not over." As if on cue, the rumbling intensified and the very ground beneath them split wide open. A massive chasm yawned before them, black tendrils of energy swirling from the depths, writhing like serpents. Kale's heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary dungeon. This was something far darker, far more dangerous than anything they had encountered before. Lyra stepped back, her hand lifting to shield her eyes from the sudden flare of light that erupted from the chasm. A voice echoed from the depths, not one of flesh and blood, but something older, deeper, something that seemed to come from the vault itself. "You dare disturb the slumber of the Eternal Watcher." Kale's heart stopped. He had heard legends of the Eternals, but he had never expected to come face to face with one. The voice spoke again, this time with a sense of growing power, its tone laced with malice. "The vault is the prison of the Eternal Watcher. You are too late." Before Kale could process the words, the ground shifted again, and a massive figure rose from the depths of the chasm, its silhouette blocking out the dim light of the vault. It was a creature of darkness, its form a twisted amalgamation of shadow and flame. Its eyes burned with a cold, malevolent fire, and its massive wings beat the air with such force that the very stone around them cracked. The Eternal Watcher had awakened. Kale instinctively drew his sword, his body tensing as the weight of the moment pressed down on him. He could feel it. This was no ordinary monster, no simple guardian. This was something far beyond anything he had faced before, something ancient and terrifying. Lyra's voice broke through the silence. "Kale, we need to get out of here," she cried, her voice filled with fear. "This thing, it's not like the others. We can't fight it." Kale didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a step forward, his eyes locked on the Eternal Watcher. The creature's form seemed to ripple and shift as if it were made of pure darkness, its massive wings unfurling with a deafening roar. Its eyes glowed with the intensity of a dying star, and Kale could feel the oppressive weight of its presence pushing against him. "This is the end," the Watcher's voice boomed, resonating in Kale's chest like a drumbeat. "You should never have come here." Kale clenched his jaw, the cold grip of fear threatening to tighten around his chest. He wasn't sure if he could defeat this being, but there was no other choice. He couldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything he had sacrificed to get this far. "I'll stop you," Kale said, his voice steady, even as the weight of the Watcher's power pressed down on him. The Eternal Watcher laughed, a sound like the howling wind through a graveyard. "You are nothing but a mere mortal," the Watcher sneered. "Your powers are insignificant. Your fate is already sealed." But Kale didn't flinch. His ashen aura flared, the energy of his blade surging through him, heightening his senses. He wasn't just Kale Arclight anymore. He was more than that. He had pushed himself beyond his limits, and he would do whatever it took to survive. He stepped forward, the ground shaking beneath his feet as he charged at the Watcher, his sword glowing with the fierce light of his ashen flame. "Ember Veil," Kale roared, sending a blast of fiery energy toward the Watcher. The creature blocked the attack effortlessly, raising one hand as if to swat away a fly. But Kale wasn't done yet. He dashed forward, closing the distance with lightning speed, and unleashed his next attack. Burnout dash. Kale's body blurred with speed, his sword slashing toward the Watcher's massive form. The blade connected, sending a shock wave through the air, but the Watcher's dark aura absorbed the blow, leaving not even a scratch on its blackened skin. The Watcher tilted its head, amusement flickering in its burning eyes. "Is that all you have, little mortal?" Kale's chest tightened, but he refused to back down. He could feel his powers waning, but something deep within him urged him to push forward. He wasn't going to let this creature win. Not after everything he had fought for. The ashen ember pulsed with energy, and Kale summoned the full strength of his aura. He wasn't going to hold back anymore. "Soul Scorch," Kale shouted, unleashing a torrent of flames so intense that the very air around him seemed to warp. The Eternal Watcher's eyes widened, but it raised its hand, and a wall of shadow formed in front of it, absorbing the blast. The power of the Soul Scorch dissipated into the void, leaving the Watcher unscathed. "You cannot defeat me," the Watcher growled. "I am beyond you, beyond everything you know." But Kale wasn't listening anymore. His mind was focused on one thing: victory. He could feel his powers reaching their peak, the ashen aura flooding his senses. The vault had awakened something in him, something he couldn't yet understand, but he would soon. Kale's sword gleamed with a deadly light as he prepared for his next move. The battle was far from over. Kale's breath was ragged, the weight of exhaustion clinging to his limbs as he stood before the Eternal Watcher. The battle raged on, but Kale felt as though the world itself was closing in around him. The vault, the dark presence of the Watcher, it was all too much. But he couldn't afford to falter. Not now. The Watcher's dark form loomed above him, its wings unfurled in an almost mocking display of power. Its eyes, two burning orbs of malevolent fire, locked on a Kale with an intensity that could burn through steel. Every movement it made seemed to twist reality itself, the very air warping around it. Kale tightened his grip on Ashen Ember, feeling the flames of his ashen aura surge through him. His power had been tested like never before, but he refused to let the Watcher see his doubt. He couldn't afford to lose. He couldn't let this ancient terror claim his world. "You think you can stand against me?" The Watcher boomed, its voice like thunder. "I have stood for eons, and I shall stand for eons more. Your struggle is futile." Kale's mind raced. He knew the Watcher was right. He was but a single mortal, and the creature before him was far older, far more powerful than anything he had ever faced. But he also knew one undeniable truth. He had come this far, and he would not be the one to let it all end here. Lyra's voice cut through the tension, trembling but strong. "Kale, you can't do this alone. We need to fall back." "No," Kale interrupted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We fight. We can't run." Lyra hesitated, but she nodded, her determination matching his own. She raised the sun veil feather high, and a radiant barrier of golden light surrounded them both. Even as she struggled to maintain her aura, she stood firm beside Kale, unwilling to back down in the face of such an overwhelming foe. Kale could feel the weight of the decision bearing down on him. To fight the Eternal Watcher was to challenge fate itself. But it was the only choice he had left. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, drawing on the energy of his ashen aura. He could feel it, his aura resonating with the vault's ancient power. Something was awakening inside him. He didn't fully understand it yet, but he felt the stirrings of something greater than himself. With a roar, Kale launched himself toward the Watcher once more, his blade blazing with the full intensity of his aura. The flames of ashen ember whipped around him, lashing out in every direction as he moved. The Watcher, unfazed, raised its hand and unleashed a massive wave of dark energy, crashing toward Kale with the force of 1,000 storms. Kale's eyes widened. It was too much. He couldn't dodge it, and he certainly couldn't block it. His only option was to meet it head-on. "Ashen Domain!" Kale shouted, his voice echoing throughout the vault. The world around him twisted. The ground trembled as a wave of dark flame erupted from him, enveloping the area in a torrent of destructive energy. The Ashen Domain spread out like a blackened halo, consuming everything in its path. The dark wave of the Watcher collided with Kale's Ashen Domain, and for a moment, the two forces seemed to balance each other, neither one gaining the upper hand. But Kale could feel it. He was running out of time. His aura was beginning to flicker, the energy he had summoned starting to wane. The Watcher's eyes flared with anger, its burning gaze turning into a glare of pure fury. "You dare challenge me with such pitiful strength?" But Kale didn't waver. His teeth gritted, and with a final, desperate shout, he poured every last ounce of his energy into the Ashen Domain. He could feel his powers fading, the energy draining from his body, but he couldn't stop. Not now. And then, in the midst of the battle's chaos, something changed. The vault trembled as if responding to Kale's desperate plea, and a burst of energy surged through his body. The ashen aura flickered and burned brighter than ever before. Kale's sword, Ashen Ember, erupted in a massive blaze of light, and the very air around him seemed to crackle with the intensity of his power. "You!" The Watcher's voice faltered for the first time, a hint of uncertainty creeping into its tone. "What are you?" Kale's eyes narrowed as he finally found the strength to answer. "I am Kale Arclight, and I will not be your prey." With one final, earth-shattering cry, Kale launched himself forward, the full force of his ashen aura unleashed in a single, devastating strike. The Watcher howled as Kale's sword pierced its dark form, the energy of the Ashen Ember clashing with the ancient power of the Eternal. The vault shook violently, and for a moment, it felt as if the world itself would collapse. The Watcher staggered back, its form flickering and distorting as Kale's sword continued to burn through its essence. The Watcher's eyes widened in shock as its form began to crumble, its dark power unraveling in the wake of Kale's attack. "No!" The Watcher's voice was a whisper now, barely audible over the deafening roar of the battle. "This cannot be." With a final, agonizing scream, the Eternal Watcher disintegrated, its form turning to ash in the wind. The vault fell silent, the oppressive weight of its presence finally lifting. Kale stood panting, his body trembling from the exertion. His sword, ashen ember, still glowed with the faintest embers of its former power, but the battle was over. He had won, but at what cost? Lyra rushed to his side, her eyes filled with both awe and concern. Kale, you did it. Kale's gaze was distant, his mind still reeling from the intensity of the battle. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up, he murmured, his voice hoarse. The power, it's too much. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch gentle yet firm. We'll find a way. Together. Kale nodded slowly, but deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Eternal Watcher was only one piece of a much larger puzzle, and the road ahead would be far more treacherous than anything he had faced before. But for now, he had one, and that was enough. Kale stood on the precipice of the vault, the weight of his victory settling over him like an unyielding fog. The Eternal Watcher was no more, its ashes scattering on the winds that howled through the mountainside. But the taste of triumph was bittersweet. He had won, but at what cost? The burn in his chest was not just from physical exhaustion. It was the sense of impending change, the kind that stirred deep within him. The ashen aura, for all its power, had taken a toll. He could feel it, the strain of pushing his limits, of tapping into a force he wasn't fully in control of. He had barely kept it together during the battle, and now he wondered if he could continue this path much longer without breaking. You did it. Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts, soft and full of admiration. She stood beside him, her sunveil feather glowing faintly in the light of the setting sun. There was a look of awe in her eyes, but also a quiet concern. Kale gave a faint smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Yeah, I did. She didn't press further, though Kale could feel her gaze lingering on him. She was the first person to see past his victory. She saw the exhaustion, the doubt. But Kale couldn't afford to show weakness now, not when the battle had only just begun. Drake stepped forward, his usual fire in his eyes, but there was something more subdued about him now. So the Watcher's gone. That's a win. He cracked his knuckles, his eyes scanning the area. But I don't think that was the end of it, Kale. Kale nodded, his gaze drifting to the horizon. No, it wasn't. There was an uncomfortable silence between them, broken only by the soft whispers of the wind. Lyra's quiet voice brought their attention back to the present. We need to leave the vault, she said. This place, it's unstable. The fight has shaken something deeper within it. I'm sensing a surge of power beneath the surface. Kale's eyes hardened. What do you mean by beneath the surface? Lyra swallowed, her brow furrowing. I don't know yet, but it's ancient, older than the vault itself. And it's awakening. At her words, Kale felt a chill creep up his spine. If there was one thing he had learned on this journey, it was that nothing ever came without a price. And whatever was stirring beneath the vault could very well be the catalyst for the next stage of his destiny. We'll figure it out, Kale said, though doubt lingered in his words. For now, let's move. We need to regroup. Drake scoffed, but didn't argue. Lead the way, boss. But I don't trust this place. Whatever's under there, it doesn't seem like it's just waiting for us to walk away. Lyra turned toward Kale, her expression softening. We have to trust that whatever comes next, we face it together. Kale nodded. He knew she was right. He wasn't alone in this. But that didn't stop the weight in his chest from growing heavier. The journey down the mountain was long and exhausting, but they couldn't afford to rest. Not when they had no idea what was lurking beneath the surface. The vault had been a place of power, but now it felt hollow, like a wound that had been left open and was slowly starting to fester. As they reached the base of the mountain, Kale's thoughts wandered to the next step. The Watcher was dead, but that only brought more questions. Why had the Watcher been there in the first place? What had it been guarding, and why had it been so determined to stop him? These questions gnawed at him, but the answers weren't something he could find on the wind. They reached a small, secluded village by nightfall, and Kale found himself sitting in a modest tavern, nursing a mug of lukewarm ale. The others had gone off to rest or gather supplies, But Kale couldn't relax. His mind was still racing, thoughts spiraling in a way that wouldn't let him settle. A figure approached him at the bar. Kale didn't need to look up to recognize the silhouette. It was Zara, not resting. Zara's voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it, like she knew something Kale didn't. Kale glanced up at her, his face impassive. I can't afford to. Zara took the seat beside him, her eyes scanning the room before settling back on him. You did well today. Better than I expected. Kale didn't reply, his gaze fixed on his mug. He could feel Zara's piercing stare, but he wasn't in the mood for her usual games. I've been meaning to talk to you, Kale, Zara continued, her voice lower now, almost conspiratorial. What you did back there with the ashen aura, that wasn't just you tapping into your power. Kale's expression shifted, and his eyes narrowed. What are you getting at? Zara didn't respond immediately, her fingers tapping lightly on the bar. When she finally spoke, her voice held an undertone of something like fear, or was it caution? The Eternals are more than just a threat, she said softly. They're part of something larger. You've seen it. You felt it. The Watcher wasn't guarding just any old vault. It was a prison. And what's locked away, it's more than just a relic or treasure. It's an entire realm. Kale leaned forward, his interest piqued despite himself. A realm? What do you mean? Zara looked around one more time, then met Kale's eyes directly. The Eternals are the gatekeepers of the abyssal realm. It's the true source of their power. And if what's locked in that vault is ever released. Her voice trailed off, but Kale didn't need her to finish the sentence. He already knew. If the abyssal realm was ever opened, the world as they knew it would be consumed. You're saying there's more out there than just the Eternals? Kale asked, trying to process the enormity of the information. Zara nodded gravely. Much more. And if you think the Watcher was the end of it, Kale, you're wrong. A silence stretched between them, thick with the weight of the knowledge Zara had just dropped on him. Kale's mind was spinning, but one thing was clear. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. Kale sat in silence, the weight of Zara's words pressing down on him like a thick fog. The abyssal realm, a name that had been whispered in legends and lost to time, but now it was real, and it was tied to the very power the Eternals wielded. His mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle, but the more he thought about it, the more his stomach twisted in knots. The ashen aura surged within him, responding to his inner turmoil, but Kale fought to keep it under control. He had pushed his limits before, but this felt different. There was something far bigger at play, something that had been orchestrated long before his involvement. Zara didn't give him time to gather his thoughts. You'll need to prepare yourself, Kale, she said, her voice calm but urgent. The abyssal realm isn't just some myth. It's a reality, and it's connected to everything. The dungeons, the monsters, the Eternals, even your aura. Kale's heart skipped a beat. My aura. He stared at Zara, confusion clouding his thoughts. Ow! Zara leaned closer, her voice lowering to a whisper. The ashen aura is more than just a weapon. It's a key, a part of the abyssal realm's lock. You've been unlocking its power with every fight, every battle, and now. She paused, her eyes narrowing. Now it's starting to break free. Kale felt a chill run down his spine. The ashen aura, the power that had once felt like his greatest asset, was now something more dangerous. It wasn't just evolving. It was changing in ways he couldn't control. You said the abyssal realm is a prison. What does that mean? Kale asked, his voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. Zara's expression darkened, and for the first time, Kale saw a flicker of genuine fear in her eyes. The Eternals were created to guard the prison, Kale. But what they're guarding is not something the world was ever meant to see. It's an ancient evil, one that predates even the abyssal realm itself. Kale's grip tightened on the mug in his hands, the ceramic crackling under the pressure. He didn't want to believe it. He didn't want to accept that his power, the very thing that had saved him countless times, was tied to something so dark. But Zara's words had the ring of truth to them, and that terrified him. So what now? Kale finally asked, his voice steady despite the storm raging within him. How do we stop it? Zara's gaze drifted toward the window, where the last rays of sunlight were beginning to fade. "We can't stop it. Not alone." Drake's voice echoed from across the tavern as he approached, his face twisted into a grin, though it lacked its usual fire. "You heard her, didn't you? The Abyssal Realm isn't something we can just waltz into and defeat. We need more than just the Ashen Aura to survive whatever's coming." Kale turned toward his ally, his expression hardening. "Then what do you suggest we do? Sit here and wait for it to break through?" "No," Drake said, his tone dark. "We find the key, the real one, and we make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands." Lyra, who had been silent up until now, joined them at the table, her face set with determination. "The key? What key?" Zara nodded slowly, her eyes glinting with a hidden understanding. "There's more to the Abyssal Realm than what you've been told. And Kale, you're not the only one with a connection to it." Kale frowned. "What are you talking about?" Before Zara could respond, the tavern door slammed open with a force that shook the room. The figure that entered was tall, cloaked in dark robes, with a hood that obscured most of their face. But even from the shadows, there was something about them that sent a shiver down Kale's spine. The stranger's gaze swept over the group, and then they spoke, their voice deep and commanding. "Kale Arclight, I've been looking for you." Kale's hand instinctively went to the hilt of his blade, but the figure raised a hand, signaling for him to lower it. "I come in peace, but I have important information regarding the Abyssal Realm, and I think you're the only one who can stop what's about to happen." Lyra stood beside Kale, her eyes narrowing as she examined the stranger. "Who are you?" The figure pulled back their hood, revealing a face that was both unfamiliar and yet oddly familiar. They had striking features, sharp cheekbones, and a gaze that seemed to pierce through Kale's very soul. "My name is Vale Solane," the stranger said, "and I'm here to help you, for a price." Kale felt his pulse quicken. The name rang a bell, but he couldn't place it. "Vale Solane? I've heard of you." Vale's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "I'm sure you have. But now, we don't have the luxury of time. The Abyssal Realm is waking up, and it's more powerful than any of us could have imagined." Kale stood, his eyes locked onto Vale's with an intensity that made the air around them crackle. "If you know something about this, then you better start talking." Vale didn't flinch. Instead, they stepped closer, lowering their voice so only Kale could hear. "The key isn't just a relic, Kale. It's a person, and you've already met them." Kale's heart skipped a beat. "A person? Who?" Vale smiled, though it was far from reassuring. "Someone who's been with you all along." Kale's blood ran cold. The implications of Vale's words were terrifying. He had spent so much time focused on defeating the Eternals, he hadn't even considered that the true key might have been right in front of him the entire time. The tavern's atmosphere had shifted. Gone was the warmth and light-hearted chatter that had filled the air just moments ago. Now, a heavy silence hung over the room, thick with tension as the stranger, Vale Solane, stood before Kale and his companions, the weight of their words pressing down on them like a storm cloud about to burst. Kale's heart raced as he processed what had just been said. The key to the Abyssal Realm was a person. Someone he knew. Someone he had met already. But who? His mind flashed back to every face, every name, every ally and adversary he had crossed paths with. His brother Drake, Lyra, Zara, Carrie's night train. Could it be one of them? But why would Vale be so cryptic? What was he not telling them? Vale's eyes never left Kale's, unblinking and filled with a strange kind of certainty. The kind of certainty that only someone who knew more than they were letting on could possess. "You're not going to like this, Kale," Vale said, breaking the silence with a voice that was both calm and ominous. "The key to the Abyssal Realm is—" Before Vale could finish, Kale's hand shot out, gripping his sword tightly. His eyes were narrowed, his body taut with readiness. "Who is it?" he demanded, his voice low and fierce. "Who is the key?" Vale didn't flinch. Instead, they stepped closer, their gaze unwavering. "It's someone you trust, Kale. Someone you fought beside and fought against. Someone whose power is tied to the Abyssal Realm itself. Someone whose fate has been intertwined with yours from the beginning." Kale's grip on his sword tightened even more, but something in Vale's words held him in place. Trust? Fate? He could feel the pieces of the puzzle clicking together, but the truth still eluded him. It was as if the answer was right on the edge of his consciousness, just out of reach. Lyra's voice broke through the tension. Kale, listen to me. We don't know what's going on here, but if Vale is right, if there's someone among us who's the key, we need to figure this out. Kale's gaze shifted to Lyra. The healer's expression was soft, but her eyes were filled with concern. It was a look he had seen countless times before, but today it felt different. There was something more in her eyes, something she wasn't saying. Lyra, Kale began, his voice softer now. Do you know something? Lyra hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. I've felt it for a while now. There's something off about all of this, something I can't put into words. But I know one thing for sure. You and I, we were always meant to meet. And the way our powers work together, Kale, it's not a coincidence. The air between them seemed to shift, the weight of her words settling heavily on Kale's chest. It was as if Lyra had just opened a door, revealing something he had been avoiding for too long. His heart skipped a beat. The celestial light, her healing aura, so pure, so unlike anything he had ever encountered. It resonated with him in a way that made no sense, but now, in this moment, everything seemed to align. Lyra, Kale murmured, his voice tinged with disbelief. You're telling me that I'm telling you that I don't know all the answers, she interrupted, but I know we've been walking down this path together for a reason. And if it's true that the key is someone we trust, then it's possible that it's me. Or maybe it's you, Kale. I don't know. Kale stepped back, the realization crashing into him like a wave. Was Lyra the key? Was it her all along? Or was there something else, something deeper at play? Zara, who had been eerily silent during the exchange, spoke up then. It's not just about the key, Kale. It's about the bond, the connection. The abyssal realm can't be unlocked by just anyone. It requires more than just power. It requires unity. And right now, we don't have that. Kale turned to face Zara, his mind spinning. What do you mean by that? We've fought together. We've survived together. What else is there? Zara's eyes narrowed, her voice barely a whisper. You think the Eternals haven't already seen you? The power you've unlocked? The abyssal realm is calling to you, Kale. But it's not just the power of your ashen aura. It's the people around you, the ones who are closest to you. Only by truly understanding the bond between you all can you stop what's coming. Kale looked at his allies, his heart torn. Lyra, Drake, Zara. They had all been through so much together, faced impossible odds. And yet, Kale couldn't shake the feeling that the most important part of this journey had just begun. But would they be ready for what came next? Vale's voice broke through his thoughts. Time is running out, Kale. The abyssal realm will not wait for you to figure out who the key is. If we don't move soon, it will be too late for all of us. Kale took a deep breath, steadying himself. Then we don't waste another second. We move, we fight, and we find out the truth. The tension that had gripped the room seemed to dissipate, replaced by a quiet resolve. Kale wasn't sure what the next step would be, or if they could even survive what was to come. But one thing was clear. The fight was far from over. The abyssal realm was waiting. The air was thick with tension, a heavy silence settling over the group as they gathered in the dimly lit room. Kale stood at the center, his fists clenched at his sides. The weight of their mission had never felt so real. Each word that had been spoken, each revelation, had only deepened the mystery of the abyssal realm and the key that could unlock it. Vale's cryptic words haunted him. The key wasn't just some relic or artifact. It was someone close to them, someone whose fate had been tied to the abyssal realm all along. But who? Kale had scanned his mind 100 times over, searching for clues, but each time he came back to the same question. Was it really Lyra? Was it him? Or was the answer far darker than any of them could have imagined? Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts, her tone filled with a quiet resolve. We don't have time to question it any longer, Kale. We need to move. The abyssal realm is waking up, and we can't afford to wait until we have all the answers. Drake, ever the battle-hardened warrior, cracked his knuckles as he stepped forward. I don't know about you, but I'm not about to let whatever's lurking in the shadows of the abyssal realm take over. We fight. We take the fight to them before they have a chance to react. Kale's heart raced. He could feel the urgency in Drake's voice, the same fire that had always burned in his friend's chest. But this was different. This wasn't just about winning a fight or defeating an enemy. This was about stopping an ancient evil, one that had been sealed away for centuries. I agree with Drake, Zara said, her voice steady as always. But we can't charge him blindly. The abyssal realm is more than just a place. It's a force, a living entity that reacts to the strength and desires of those who enter it. Kale turned to face Zara, his brow furrowed. What do you mean by that? Are you saying that the abyssal realm is alive? Zara nodded, her eyes narrowing. In a way, it feeds off of darkness, fear, and chaos. It will try to bend us to its will, to manipulate our desires and turn us against each other. We need to be careful. The moment we step into its domain, we will face trials, not just from external enemies, but from within ourselves. Kale swallowed hard. The thought of facing not only monsters and Eternals, but his own inner demons, made his stomach churn. But there was no turning back now. He had come too far, seen too much. The abyssal realm was real, and its awakening was inevitable. Then we need to make sure we're prepared, Kale said, his voice resolute. We train. We strengthen our bonds. And when the time comes, we strike with everything we have. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch gentle but firm. We're with you, Kale. Always. The words settled in his chest, grounding him. He looked at each of them, Drake, Zara, Lyra, and knew they were ready. Ready for whatever awaited them. The trials, the monsters, the Eternals. They would face it all together. And together they would survive. The next day, the training grounds were alive with activity as Kale and his allies prepared for the journey ahead. They had spent the past few days refining their skills, pushing their limits, and coming to terms with the task at hand. But the fear, the uncertainty, still lingered in the back of Kale's mind. He stood at the center of the grounds, his sword drawn, his aura flaring around him like an unrelenting storm. The ashen aura responded to his emotions, growing brighter with each passing second, its heat searing his skin. He focused on it, trying to push past the unease gnawing at him. Drake, his fiery spirit never faltering, charged toward Kale, his beast flame crackling in his hands. The two clashed, their weapons colliding with a thunderous sound that echoed across the training fields. The force of the blow sent shock waves through the air, but Kale held his ground, his stance unyielding. You're not getting soft on me now, are you? Drake grinned, his eyes flashing with excitement as he pressed forward. Kale's lips twitched upward in a smirk. You wish. The two danced across the battlefield, their auras clashing in a spectacular display of light and energy. Kale pushed Drake back with a swift strike, his ashen aura flaring up to consume the air around them. The power surged through him, making his muscles burn with energy, his senses sharp. But even as he fought, his mind kept returning to the same question. What was the truth behind the abyssal realm? What was his role in all of this? Was he truly the key? Suddenly, Lyra's voice cut through his thoughts. Kale, watch out! Kale barely had time to react as a figure appeared out of nowhere, a shadow moving too fast for his eyes to track. The figure's weapon, a long, curved blade, sliced through the air with deadly precision. Kale instinctively raised his sword, blocking the strike, but the force of the blow sent him stumbling back. The figure in front of him was cloaked in darkness, their features hidden beneath a mask. Kale couldn't make out any details, but one thing was certain. This was no ordinary enemy. Drake jumped back, his beast flame flickering in his hands. Who the hell are you? He shouted. The figure didn't respond. Instead, they raised their sword, preparing for another attack. Kale tightened his grip on his sword, his ashen aura swirling around him in a deadly cyclone. This time, he wouldn't just defend. He would strike. With a roar, Kale launched himself forward, his aura crackling around him like an inferno. The figure moved with blinding speed, parrying his blow with ease. The clash of metal rang out as their swords met, sparks flying in all directions. "Who sent you?" Kale demanded, his voice tinged with fury. The figure's voice was cold, emotionless. "The Abyssal Realm has sent me, and your time is running out." Kale's heart skipped a beat. The Abyssal Realm? Was this an enemy sent to stop him? Or was it something more? Before he could react, the figure vanished into thin air, leaving only the faintest trace of darkness behind. The battle was over almost as quickly as it had begun. Kale stood still, his sword raised, his heart pounding. He knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning. The Abyssal Realm was already moving, and its forces were preparing for the inevitable clash. "We need to go." Zara's voice broke through the silence, her tone grave. "It's time." Kale nodded, his gaze hardening. "Then let's move. We face whatever's coming. Together." The day had come. The preparations were over. Kale stood at the entrance to the Abyssal Realm, his gaze fixed on the dark chasm before him. The very air around it seemed to twist and contort, as if the realm itself was alive, breathing, waiting for them. It was an ominous sight, a black, gaping maw that swallowed the light, pulling everything into its depths. Beside him stood his allies, their faces grim but resolute. They had trained for this moment, pushed themselves to their limits, but the uncertainty of what lay ahead still clung to their hearts. Kale could feel it too, the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. "We're going in," Kale said, his voice steady, though his mind raced with thoughts of what they might face. The truth of the Abyssal Realm, the key to its power, was still a mystery. But Kale couldn't afford to dwell on it. Not now. Lyra stepped forward, her celestial light aura glowing softly around her, a beacon of hope in the darkness. "Whatever happens, we're together," she said, her voice full of conviction. Drake cracked his knuckles, his beast flame flickering to life in his hands. "Let's burn this place down." Zara's eyes narrowed, her cursed mist aura swirling around her, adding an eerie quality to the already foreboding atmosphere. "Stay on guard. The Abyssal Realm doesn't take kindly to intruders." They all nodded, and together, they stepped into the darkness. The moment Kale crossed the threshold, he felt it, the oppressive weight of the Abyssal Realm pressing down on him. It was like a physical presence, suffocating, overwhelming. The air was thick with malice, a sense of ancient power swirling around them, threatening to consume them whole. The ground beneath their feet shifted, the earth groaning as if it were alive. Kale instinctively tightened his grip on his sword. His ashen aura flared to life, illuminating the path ahead, but it seemed to barely make a dent in the darkness that surrounded them. "This place, it's like it's alive," Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. "It is," Zara replied, her tone grim. "The Abyssal Realm is more than just a place. It's a reflection of the deepest fears, the darkest desires of those who enter it, and it will use those against us." Kale's heart pounded in his chest. He had already felt the whispers of the Abyssal Realm, the faintest hints of its influence trying to worm their way into his thoughts. But he couldn't let it take hold of him. Not now. They continued forward, their footsteps muffled by the oppressive silence. As they ventured deeper into the realm, Kale's senses grew sharper, his instincts on high alert. Every step seemed to pull them further into a void, a place where time and space no longer made sense. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, a low rumble that grew louder and louder, until it felt as though the very foundation of the Abyssal Realm was shaking. "Get ready," Kale growled, his hand instinctively reaching for his sword. His ashen aura flared brighter, swirling around him like a vortex of fire. A massive shadow appeared before them, towering over them like a mountain. The figure was cloaked in darkness, its form barely discernible, but the sheer power it exuded was undeniable. Kale's heart skipped a beat. It was an Abyssal Warden, one of the realm's deadliest guardians. It lunged at them with terrifying speed, its sword slashing through the air like a storm of death. Kale barely managed to block the strike, the force of the blow sending him stumbling back. The Abyssal Warden's power was unlike anything Kale had faced before. The sheer weight of its aura was crushing, pushing him to the edge of his limits. "Stay focused," Drake shouted, his beast flame roaring to life as he charged forward, his fists burning with fiery power. Kale nodded, refocusing. This was it, the moment he had been preparing for. He wasn't going to let the abyssal realm consume him. Not now. Not ever. With a roar, Kale charged, his ashen aura expanding around him, flames erupting in every direction. He slashed his sword, sending a wave of fire toward the abyssal warden. The creature howled, but it was unfazed, its dark aura forming a protective shield around it. "This is bad," Zara muttered, her cursed mist swirling around her as she created a barrier to protect herself from the abyssal warden's attacks. Kale gritted his teeth. "We need to hit it hard, all at once." He glanced at Lyra and Drake, both of whom were preparing for their next moves. Lyra's celestial light aura flared, and Drake's beast flame burned brighter, their power building for the strike to come. "Now!" Kale shouted. Lyra unleashed a burst of pure light, blinding the abyssal warden for a brief moment, while Drake charged forward, his fists engulfed in flames. The combined power of their attacks hit the warden's shield, causing it to crack and shudder. But it wasn't enough. The abyssal warden roared in fury, its aura expanding, growing stronger. Kale's heart raced. He could feel the abyssal realm pulling on his mind, trying to manipulate him to make him doubt. The whispers returned, louder now, trying to feed on his fear. "No," Kale growled, shaking his head. "I'm not afraid of you." With a surge of energy, he pushed through the pressure, his ashen aura igniting like a wildfire. His sword became an extension of his will, slashing through the abyssal warden's defenses with devastating precision. The warden staggered back, its shield shattering under the onslaught. But it wasn't over. From the darkness behind the warden, more figures began to emerge. Shadows, cloaked in the same eerie blackness, surrounded them. The abyssal realm was fighting back, throwing everything it had at them. "We need to keep pushing," Kale shouted, his voice filled with determination. And with that, they plunged deeper into the abyssal realm, ready to face whatever horrors awaited them. The battle against the abyssal warden had only been a glimpse into the hell they were about to face. Kale's sword was drenched in dark energy, the remnants of the abyssal warden's aura still swirling in the air. His heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline coursing through him. But as he looked around, he saw the faces of his companions, their eyes filled with determination and a glimmer of doubt. They weren't alone anymore. More shadows emerged from the dark, their presence like a creeping fog that suffocated every breath they took. The abyssal realm seemed to stretch infinitely, its twisted corridors leading to unknown horrors, each step forward a challenge to their very souls. "Stay sharp," Zara warned, her voice steady even as the mist of her cursed mist aura swirled around her. The abyssal realm isn't just about fighting. It's about survival. The ground beneath them trembled again, and a low, guttural sound echoed from the depths. Kale's instincts screamed at him to keep moving, to press forward despite the heavy pressure weighing down on him. "We've only just started," Kale muttered under his breath, clenching his sword tighter. "We need to find the source of this darkness. It's the only way to end this." Drake stepped forward, his face twisted in a snarl. "I'm not just going to sit around and let this place grind us down. Let's tear through it." Lyra, her face pale but determined, nodded. "Kale's right. If we keep fighting blindly, we'll be consumed. We need to find the heart of this place." Kale shot her a look of gratitude, his expression softening for just a moment before he turned back to face the endless blackness. "All right, we move out." As they ventured deeper, the air grew colder, the atmosphere heavier. The shadows that had followed them began to take form. More figures, more enemies, but this time they weren't as solid. They flickered in and out of existence, their forms constantly shifting, warping into space between light and dark. Kale could feel the abyssal realm trying to get to him again, pushing against his mind, sending waves of oppressive energy that made his chest feel tight. The whispers began again, louder now, a cacophony of voices all clamoring for attention. They promised him power, freedom, and the end of his suffering. They urged him to embrace the darkness and become one with the abyss. He gritted his teeth. Not today. The whispers faded, but the pressure remained. He wasn't sure how much longer he could fight it. He couldn't afford to fall here, not when they were so close. Kale, Lyra said, her voice breaking the silence. Stay focused. We're almost there. He didn't respond, his focus on the shadows ahead. They were closing in, and then it happened. From the darkness, a massive figure emerged, its shape more monstrous than anything Kale had ever seen. It was a twisted abomination, its body composed of countless writhing shadows, its eyes burning with an unnatural crimson glow. The Abyssal King. It let out a deafening roar, the sound of its voice reverberating through the ground like thunder. Kale instinctively took a step back, his grip tightening around his sword as his ashen aura flared to life. Everyone get ready, Kale shouted, his voice filled with authority. This is what we've been preparing for. Drake's beast flame ignited, roaring to life in his hands. It's time to burn this thing to the ground. Zara's cursed mist aura enveloped her, a thick fog of darkness swirling around her as she took her stance. We've fought monsters before, but this one is different. Lyra raised her hands, her celestial light aura flaring in response. Kale, we'll keep you covered. You take the lead. Without another word, Kale surged forward, his sword raised high. The Abyssal King charged, its massive claws slashing through the air like lightning. Kale met its attack head-on, his blade clashing against its shadowy form with an explosion of energy. The impact was enough to send Kale flying backward, crashing into the ground with a grunt of pain. The Abyssal King was even stronger than it appeared. Its power was overwhelming, its aura like a flood of darkness that threatened to swallow everything in its path. Kale, Lyra called out, her voice full of concern. Kale pushed himself to his feet, his body aching but his will unbroken. He could feel his ashen aura burning bright, but the more he fought, the more drained he became. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep it up. I won't stop, Kale growled, his voice filled with fierce determination. Not now. With a roar, he charged once more, his blade slicing through the air as he aimed for the Abyssal King's heart. But the creature was too fast, its massive form shifting and dodging with unnatural agility. It countered with a slash of its own, and Kale barely managed to deflect the blow. Drake was at his side in an instant, his beast flame ablaze as he delivered a series of rapid punches, each one striking with the force of a meteor. The Abyssal King staggered back, its form flickering as the flames began to scorch its shadowy body. Zara was next, her cursed mist enveloping the Abyssal King, her dark energy flowing into its form, seeping into its very essence. You're not getting away that easily. The Abyssal King howled in anger, its form pulsating with dark energy as it retaliated with a wave of shadowy tendrils. Kale barely dodged in time, but the attack still clipped his shoulder, sending pain shooting through his body. But Lyra was there, her celestial light aura flaring as she reached out and healed him in an instant, the warmth of her energy soothing the pain. Stay strong, Kale. We can win this. Kale nodded, his body pulsing with energy as he surged forward once more. This time he would end it. With one final cry, he swung his sword down, cleaving through the Abyssal King's dark form. The creature howled in agony, its body disintegrating into smoke and shadows, its power fading into nothingness. The Abyssal King was no more. For a moment, there was silence. Kale's chest heaved as he tried to catch his breath, his body aching from the battle. The Abyssal Realm still loomed around them, its twisted form pressing in, but for now, they had won. But the fight was far from over. Kale. Lyra's voice was soft, filled with concern. Are you okay? Kale smiled weakly, his hand gripping his sword tightly. I'm fine for now. Zara glanced around, her eyes scanning the shadows. This is only the beginning. The Abyssal Realm will send more after us. Drake cracked his knuckles, a fierce grin on his face. Then we'll burn through them all. Kale turned his gaze to the dark path ahead. The Abyssal Realm had revealed its first major threat, but Kale knew this was only the beginning. They had entered a world far beyond what they could have imagined, a world where darkness and despair reigned. But they were ready. They had to be. The battle for their survival had only just begun. The silence after the fall of the Abyssal King was not peace. It was a warning. Kale stood still, blade lowered, watching as the final wisps of shadow evaporated into the dead air. His breath was ragged. Every inch of his body ached from the relentless strain, but his heart was steady, unwavering. He wasn't the same fighter who had barely survived the corrupted dungeon. He had changed, hardened by battle, sharpened by loss. But this realm, it still pulsed with dark intent. "Something's wrong," Zara said coldly. Her voice cut through the stillness like a blade. The Abyssal King was a guardian, not the source. Kale narrowed his eyes. "Then we haven't reached the core." Drake cracked his neck, still twitching with leftover adrenaline. "Fine. More things to burn. Let's keep moving." The terrain ahead shifted. The ground beneath them cracked and spiraled downward like a broken staircase made of obsidian and bone. With each step, Kale felt a heaviness press down on his chest, not just physical but spiritual, like the realm was trying to pull his soul out of his body. Lyra walked beside him, her light aura flickering. She was growing weaker. Even her healing spells had started to falter. "We're pushing our limits. Kale, how much farther can we go like this?" Kale looked over his shoulder at her. "Until it's done." His voice didn't waver, but inside doubt curled like smoke. He could feel his ashen aura resonating with something deep in the darkness. A calling, or a curse. They pressed forward, deeper into the shifting heart of the Abyssal Realm. The descent took hours, or minutes. Time didn't seem to matter here. When they finally reached the bottom of the spiral, they found themselves in a massive chamber. There was no ceiling, only an endless expanse of shifting black sky above. Floating relics drifted in the air, shards of weapons, armor, and crystallized aura, all shattered and corrupted. The ground pulsed beneath their feet like a heartbeat. And at the center of it all stood a lone figure. Cloaked in tattered violet robes, with a mask of bone and ember, the figure exuded an aura so dense it made even Drake freeze mid-step. It wasn't the pressure of sheer strength. It was the weight of history, of something ancient, something eternal. Zara whispered, "I know that aura." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Who is it?" The figure spoke. Its voice echoed in every direction at once. Whispers layered over screams. "You bear the ashen thread, and yet you deny its purpose." Kale raised his sword. "I don't need purpose. I'll make my own. You carry the legacy of the Revenant King, the blade that consumed realms. And yet you hesitate." The cloak of the figure billowed. From its shadow, a black spear formed, wreathed in flame and frost, shifting between elements as though the weapon itself were alive. Kale's hand shook slightly. "You're one of them." Zara's eyes widened. "That's no ordinary enemy. That's a harbinger, a direct servant of the Eternals." The harbinger lifted the spear. "Prove your worth, Ashen Soul." Without warning, the battle erupted. Kale dashed forward, clashing blades with the harbinger in an instant. Sparks flew as metal met aura. The harbinger moved like flowing water, impossible to predict. Each strike pushed Kale back, forcing him to adapt, to evolve mid-combat. Drake joined the fray, fists ablaze with beast flame, throwing wild haymakers that could level fortress. The harbinger absorbed the blows, then retaliated with a sweeping wave of abyssal flame that forced the group to scatter. Zara struck from the shadows, her cursed mist swirling around the harbinger like a vice, trying to bind it. But the harbinger merely flicked his spear, and the mist shattered like glass. "You cannot chain death itself," it hissed. Lyra, he focused, her light aura flaring in desperation. She summoned a massive barrier between Kale and the harbinger just in time to block a killing blow. Kale gritted his teeth. His body was beginning to fracture under the pressure. But in that moment, his aura pulsed. Ash, then flame, then silence. He closed his eyes and inhaled. Evolve, adapt, absorb. From within, his ashen aura erupted, but something was different. It had threads of celestial light, fragments of beast flame, and a ghost of cursed mist. He had fought beside them for so long that their auras had become part of him. Auras sync. Zara breathed in disbelief. He's doing it unconsciously. Kale opened his eyes, and they glowed with embers and starlight. With a roar, he surged forward. Every strike was now layered with hybrid energy. Light and shadow, flame and ash. The Harbinger stumbled. Its perfect form was no longer untouchable. Kale ducked under the next strike and plunged his blade through the Harbinger's chest. The Harbinger froze, then slowly staggered back. A hole now burned clean through its robes. "You truly are the Ashen Revenant," it whispered. Kale didn't speak. He stepped forward, blade in hand, breathing hard. The Harbinger dropped to its knees and laughed. "Then the world will burn again." With those words, the Harbinger's body dissolved into smoke, leaving behind only a single sigil etched in the floor, a swirling emblem of ash, blood, and flame. The chamber began to collapse. "We have to go," Lyra shouted. Kale turned to run, but not before one final whisper echoed across the chamber. "When the seventh seal breaks, the Ashen One must choose." They escaped the crumbling ruin, barely making it to a collapsing platform before being hurled through a rift of darkness. When the light returned, they were back in Arena. But nothing felt the same. Kale looked at his hands. His aura was still flaring, still unstable. The Harbinger had awoken something in him, and now it wouldn't be quiet. Not anymore. The wind howled through the cliffs of Alarith Peaks. Cold, biting, relentless. But none of it mattered to Kale Arclight as he stood at the edge of the broken spire, staring down at the valley below. The land still bore the scars of the Harbinger's influence: blackened trees, twisted stone, and corrupted remnants that pulsed faintly with leftover aura. He clenched his fist. His aura was changing again. It wasn't just the Ashen anymore. It was evolving, mutating with every battle, with every life he took. Beast flame, celestial light, cursed mist, even fragments of the Harbinger's abyssal echo now coiled inside him. It made him stronger, faster, more adaptive, but it came with a cost. He could feel his soul thinning. "I heard you didn't sleep again," Lyra's voice called from behind. Kale didn't turn. "I don't need sleep. You need balance," she said gently. "What you're becoming, it's not just power. It's consuming you." Kale looked at his palm, watching as strands of multiple aura types spiraled around his skin. "I don't have the luxury of balance." A silence settled between them. Then Lyra stepped forward, placing the sun veil feather in his hand. "You saved me in that dungeon," she said. "I trusted you then. I still do. But if you keep walking this path alone, you'll lose what made you worth saving." Kale looked at her, really looked. The worry in her eyes wasn't for the mission. It was for him. "I can't promise anything," he muttered. She nodded. "Then just promise you'll try." Down in the valley, Drake was sparring with a group of Sunspire trainees. His aura flared wildly, flames erupting with every strike. The trainees couldn't even touch him. "Too slow," Drake shouted, ducking under a swing and slamming his gauntlet into the ground, sending a shockwave of fire across the clearing. Zara leaned against a ruined column, arms crossed, observing the scene with a quiet intensity. "He's testing them," she said as Kale approached. "Testing us all, really?" Kale raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For the war that's coming," Zara replied. The Harbinger's message wasn't just prophecy. It was a countdown. Kale sat beside her. "You knew this was coming, didn't you?" Zara's lips curved into a faint smirk. "I suspected. That sigil he left. It was one of the 7 sigils. Each marks a tether point between the eternal realm and ours. When all 7 awaken," Kale finished, "they break through." "Exactly." He sighed, the weight settling in again. "Then we stop the next sigil from awakening." "It's not that simple," she said, eyes glinting. "Some of them are already active, hidden, guarded, and not everyone wants them sealed." Kale looked at her sharply. You mean there are humans trying to bring the Eternals through? She nodded. Cultists, Forsaken Hunters, Exiles, and worse, there's another Revenant. That night, a meeting was called inside the newly reclaimed Sunspire outpost. Vale Solane stood at the head of the war table, her presence commanding. The Vanguard had suffered heavy losses during the Harbinger incursion. Morale was frayed, and the alliance between the major cities hung by a thread. The sigil left behind has confirmed our worst fear, Vale said. We're in a prelude to the next cataclysm. We found traces of a second one, beneath the ruins of Lyriel's Divide. An audible gasp spread across the room. That region had been off-limits for years. Too dangerous. Too corrupted. Kale leaned forward. Send me. Vale's eyes locked onto his. You just came back from a Harbinger fight. You need to recover. Kale shook his head. There's no time. You need someone who can adapt. Someone who can match the darkness. Zara nodded. And he has the Ashen thread. If another Harbinger appears, he's our only shot. Vale hesitated, then finally relented. Fine, but you don't go alone. She looked at Drake, Lyra, and Zara. This is now a sanctioned team under Sunspire's banner. Your mission is to locate and contain the second sigil. If possible, destroy it. 3 days later, the team stood at the edge of Lyriel's Divide. The landscape was twisted beyond recognition. Ancient trees bent like skeletal claws, rivers that flowed with dark ichor, and the constant sound of whispers that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. This place, it feels like a graveyard, Lyra whispered. Kale drew his blade. No, it's worse. They began their descent. As they walked, Kale began to feel something gnawing at the edge of his consciousness. Whispers, but not from the realm. From within him. A revenant, not alone, broken, incomplete. He clutched his chest. His ashen aura pulsed violently. Zara caught his stagger. You okay? Something's here, Kale growled. Something like me. Suddenly the ground shook. A massive glyph exploded beneath them, flaring with corrupted light. From the shadows, a figure rose, cloaked in dark crimson. A mask of bones split down the center. His aura was like Kale's, ashen and abyssal, a fusion of death and flame. Kale's breath caught. No way. Drake stepped up, fists igniting. Another revenant. Zara's face paled. No, that's not just any revenant. Kale whispered the name he didn't know he remembered. Riven. The battle exploded without warning. Riven moved like Kale, but faster, crueler, unrestrained. His blade was jagged, forged from the bones of dead monsters, each swing carrying a chorus of the damned. Kale barely blocked the first strike, the force sending him flying backward into a crumbled statue. Drake charged, roaring, only to be flung into a cliffside with a flick of Riven's hand. Zara vanished into mist, launching chains of cursed aura, but Riven absorbed them, laughing. Your tricks are weak, Shadowborn, he mocked. Lyra unleashed a burst of healing light to protect Kale, but Riven slashed through it with a grin. Light only burns if you believe in it, he sneered. Kale pushed his feet, rage building. He wasn't just fighting an enemy. He was fighting what he could become. The air split as Kale unleashed Ashen Domain, a storm of adaptive aura that warped the battlefield. The sky darkened. The winds howled with embers and light. But Riven smiled. I see it now. You're not a threat. You're just the seed. I'm the bloom. Their blades collided, aura roaring around them like a storm. The world trembled.